In this video, we're going to be breaking down 3 hours of horrifying SpongeBob lore. Let's get started with the video. Starting it off with the SpongeBob SquarePants episode, I Was a Teenage Gary, stands as one of the most disturbing entries in the show's entire run. This season 1 episode, which aired on the 28th of October 1999, pushed the boundaries of what audiences expected from a children's cartoon by depicting a horrifying transformation sequence that rivals classic horror films in its execution and atmosphere. The setup, a simple mistake. The episode begins innocently enough with SpongeBob caring for his pet snail Gary before leaving for a 3-day jellyfishing convention at Ukulele Bottom with Patrick. When SpongeBob asks Squidward to watch Gary for the weekend, Squidward initially refuses but changes his mind when he realizes he'll have 3 glorious days without his annoying neighbors. The setup is straightforward. SpongeBob shows Squidward detailed care instructions, including taking Gary for walks twice daily and feeding him specific cans of snail food, marked for morning and night. The instructions are clear and simple, but Squidward's selfishness becomes the catalyst for everything that follows. He becomes so absorbed in his own relaxation and sunbathing that he completely forgets about Gary for the entire 3-day weekend. The neglect and its consequences. When SpongeBob returns home, Gary appears old, withered, and severely dehydrated from 3 days without food or water. The visual transformation of Gary from a healthy, energetic snail to a decrepit, suffering creature is genuinely unsettling. His weakened state prompts SpongeBob to call a veterinarian, who diagnoses the problem and prescribes snail plasma administered through injection. The vet's quirky admission that he's too squeamish to give the injection himself adds dark comedy to the situation, forcing Squidward to take responsibility. However, the injection goes horribly wrong when SpongeBob keeps pulling Gary away at the last second, causing Squidward to accidentally inject the snail plasma directly into SpongeBob's nose instead. This moment serves as the turning point of the episode. What begins as a simple caretaking mishap escalates into something far more sinister. The snail plasma, intended only for Gary, now courses through SpongeBob's body with unknown consequences. The transformation begins. Initially, both Squidward and SpongeBob dismiss the accidental injection as harmless. Squidward insists nothing will happen, and when Gary recovers simply by drinking water, it seems the crisis has passed. But the snail plasma begins working its terrible magic almost immediately. The first subtle sign appears when SpongeBob eats all of Gary's food directly from the bowl, unable to control himself. More alarming is when he involuntarily meows afterward, catching himself in confusion. His movements begin to slow dramatically, his footsteps becoming heavy and labored as Gary starts moving faster than him. These early symptoms build dread, effectively signaling that something is fundamentally wrong. The horror unfolds. The transformation sequence in the bathroom represents one of the most genuinely frightening moments in SpongeBob SquarePants history. What makes this scene particularly effective is how it takes its time, building tension through multiple stages rather than rushing through the horror. SpongeBob enters the bathroom and looks in the mirror, insisting he's fine even as dramatic music swells. His head begins to throb, and his pores visibly grow and shrink in a deeply unsettling way. When this subsides, he reassures himself again, but the worst is yet to come. His eyes suddenly bug out of his head, causing him to scream. For a brief moment, they return to normal, offering false hope. Then they bulge out even farther in an extremely unnatural way before transforming completely into snail eye stalks with skin and eyelids. This gradual escalation maximizes the horror, giving viewers time to process each disturbing development. The complete metamorphosis. Even with eye stalks, SpongeBob desperately maintains that he's fine, but his body continues betraying him. He falls to his hands and knees in obvious pain, barely able to speak. His right arm retracts into his sleeve, which pops off and bounces away. Despite losing a limb, he tries to joke that he's a lefty anyway, though this attempt at humor only emphasizes the tragedy of his situation. His legs retract into his pants next, and he nervously laughs about not needing new shoes. His entire body then shortens and compresses into a snail-like form. The final horror comes when he loses the ability to speak human language entirely, his desperate scream cutting off mid-word as he completes his transformation into a full snail-sponge hybrid. His last attempt to say something to Gary ends only in a meow. now. Squidward's Reckoning. When SpongeBob crawls to Squidward's house seeking help, the octopus opens his door, expecting to dismiss SpongeBob's worries. Instead, he confronts the horrifying result of his negligence. SpongeBob stands before him as a grotesque hybrid creature, meowing pathetically. Squidward's reaction is pure terror as he screams and tries to barricade himself inside his house. The chase sequence that follows plays like a horror movie. SpongeBob squeezes through boarded windows and under doors, while Squidward runs frantically through his house, screaming and climbing walls. The entire house rocks violently from side to side before flipping completely, leaving Squidward dazed in the wreckage. The twist ending. In a final, darkly comic twist, Squidward accidentally injects himself with the snail plasma during the chaos, sealing his fate. The episode concludes with SpongeBob, Squidward, and Gary sitting on a fence at night, all transformed into snail hybrids, singing together in meows. Patrick, woken by their noise, throws a boot at them in annoyance. This ending provides no resolution or cure. The transformation appears permanent, though future episodes would ignore this continuity. The fact that both SpongeBob and Squidward end up as snail creatures adds a layer of karmic justice to Squidward's punishment while maintaining the episode's unsettling tone. Why this episode disturbs. Several factors make I Was a Teenage Gary particularly disturbing compared to other dark SpongeBob episodes. The transformation sequence draws heavily from classic body horror films, particularly An American Werewolf in London, which the episode deliberately parodies. The slow, painful metamorphosis, where SpongeBob loses parts of his body and his humanity while remaining conscious throughout, creates genuine unease. The episode doesn't shy away from showing SpongeBob's suffering. He's clearly in pain, confused, and frightened as his body betrays him. The fact that he keeps trying to convince himself and Gary that he's fine even as he transforms makes the horror more psychological and tragic. The animation quality deserves special mention. The transformation is rendered in disturbing detail, with SpongeBob's pores pulsating, his eyes bulging unnaturally, and his limbs disappearing in ways that feel visceral and wrong. The decision to show the transformation gradually, rather than cutting away, respects the audience while delivering genuine scares. The episode's legacy. I Was a Teenage Gary aired during SpongeBob's first season when the show was still finding its voice and willing to take creative risks. The episode demonstrated that children's animation could incorporate elements of horror while maintaining humor and heart. It became one of the most memorable episodes for viewers who watched it as children, many of whom report being genuinely frightened by the transformation scene. The episode's willingness to commit fully to its horror concept without pulling punches or providing an easy resolution set a precedent for future dark SpongeBob episodes. It showed that the series could tackle mature themes and disturbing imagery while remaining within the bounds of children's entertainment. The body horror genre typically explores themes of loss of control, identity, and the fragility of the human form. I Was a Teenage Gary successfully translates these adult horror concepts into a format accessible to younger viewers while not diluting their impact. SpongeBob literally loses himself, transforming into something he cannot control or reverse. Cultural impact. The episode has maintained relevance in internet culture, with the transformation scene frequently referenced in discussions of disturbing children's cartoon moments. The imagery of SpongeBob with snail eye stalks has become iconic in its own right, representing the show's willingness to venture into genuinely creepy territory. For many viewers, this episode served as an introduction to body horror concepts, creating lasting memories and sometimes nightmares. The fact that it aired on the 28th of October, 1999, just before Halloween, was appropriate timing for its horror themes. Analysis of Squidward's role. Squidward's negligence drives the plot, making him indirectly responsible for SpongeBob's suffering. His selfishness in wanting a peaceful weekend leads him to forget Gary entirely, setting everything in motion. When faced with the consequences, he tries to hide his mistake by frantically feeding Gary everything at once, but the damage is already done. His eventual transformation serves as poetic justice, though the punishment seems extreme, given that his crime was essentially forgetfulness rather than malicious intent. The episode doesn't let him off the hook, literally making him experience the same fate he inflicted on SpongeBob through his carelessness. The medical horror element. The episode taps into fears about medical procedures and injections. The veterinarian's admission that he's too squeamish to administer the injection himself is darkly funny while establishing that this is not a routine procedure. The oversized, shell-shaped syringe looks intimidating, and when it's accidentally used on SpongeBob, the consequences are catastrophic. This plays on common childhood fears about shots and medical treatments, transforming a routine veterinary care scenario into a nightmare. The snail plasma represents how medicine meant to heal can harm when misused or administered to the wrong patient. I Was a Teenage Gary remains one of SpongeBob SquarePants' most daring and disturbing episodes. Its commitment to genuine horror, detailed transformation sequence, and dark conclusion make it stand out in the series. The episode successfully balances humor with horror, creating something that entertains while genuinely unsettling viewers. The transformation of SpongeBob from his normal, cheerful self into a meowing snail hybrid represents a loss of identity and humanity that resonates beyond typical cartoon shenanigans. Combined with the episode's refusal to provide a happy resolution, it creates a viewing experience that lingers in memory long after the credits roll. For a children's cartoon that aired in 1999, it pushed boundaries in ways that remain impressive and disturbing today. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Shanghaied, the Flying Dutchman's Fly of Despair. The SpongeBob SquarePants episode Shanghaied aired on the 9th of March 2001 during Season 2 and became one of the most memorable episodes in the series. This episode stands out not only for its dark themes but also for its unique interactive format that originally allowed viewers to choose between 3 different endings. The episode explores themes of supernatural horror, eternal damnation, and the terrifying consequences of disturbing a ghost pirate. The anchor drop that changed everything. The episode begins with a seemingly ordinary morning. SpongeBob is eating his Kelpo cereal, expecting to find one of 8 prizes inside the box. Instead, a massive anchor crashes through his pineapple house, destroying everything in its path. This sudden intrusion sets the entire horrifying adventure into motion. SpongeBob rushes outside to tell Squidward that the sky had a baby, but Squidward quickly identifies the object as a giant anchor. When Patrick arrives and also thinks the sky had a baby, Squidward sarcastically suggests they climb the anchor rope, assuming it leads somewhere far away. His suggestion proves fatally accurate when the anchor crashes into his own house, forcing him to investigate. Boarding the ghost ship, the 3 characters climb the anchor rope, with the narrator noting they travel only a few inches before reaching the top. This darkly comic detail emphasizes how close the supernatural threat looms above their everyday lives. When they reach the surface, they discover a giant green ship with an eerie glow surrounding it. SpongeBob immediately recognizes something familiar about the vessel, though he cannot quite place what it is. The ship has barrels marked as property of the Flying Dutchman, but SpongeBob remains oblivious. Squidward angrily pounds on a door marked owner, demanding to file a complaint about the careless anchor placement. Meeting the Flying Dutchman. When the Flying Dutchman emerges from his quarters with an aggressive roar, the horror truly begins. SpongeBob innocently tells the ghost that Squidward wants to complain, then reminds the Dutchman about all the insults Squidward supposedly made about the ship being dirty and the owner being lazy. When SpongeBob corrects himself to say Squidward actually insulted the Dutchman's mother, the ghost shoots fire from his nose, burning Squidward. The Flying Dutchman declares that insulting a man's ship is worse than insulting his mother, establishing his volatile and dangerous nature. SpongeBob and Patrick attempt to escape by jumping off the ship multiple times, but they mysteriously land back on deck each time, with the Dutchman welcoming them back. This supernatural trap demonstrates their complete powerlessness against the ghost's abilities, the Ghost Rule Book, and eternal servitude. The Flying Dutchman produces a ghost rule book and reads the terrifying decree. Anyone who sets foot on his ship, invited or not, becomes part of his ghostly crew forever and ever. This moment transforms what seemed like a simple misadventure into an existential nightmare. The three characters are now condemned to serve the ghost pirate for all eternity. When Squidward asks if they will receive business cards, the Dutchman zaps him with supernatural energy. The ghost explains their new job involves sailing around frightening people, describing the work as grueling, mind-numbing, and repetitive, comparing it to daytime television. This darkly humorous comparison adds depth to the horror by suggesting eternal damnation might simply be extremely boring. The Fly of Despair. Squidward continues complaining about the ship's condition, criticizing the oil lamps placed near hardwood paneling and calling the vessel a disgusting dumpster. His insults prove too much for the Flying Dutchman, who unzips something in midair. Squidward mockingly asks if this is some kind of magic act, not understanding the danger he faces. The Flying Dutchman tosses Squidward into the Fly of Despair, a dimensional rift that serves as the episode's most horrifying element. Squidward screams as he falls into an endless void. The background shows him tumbling through space, surrounded by floating spaghetti and meatballs, creating a surreal nightmare landscape. SpongeBob and Patrick watch with horrified expressions as their neighbor disappears from sight. When the Dutchman asks if anyone else wants to enter the Fly of Despair, both SpongeBob and Patrick immediately declare they know their place and will do anything he says. The terror in their voices makes clear they understand the severity of Squidward's punishment. Failed ghost pirates. The Flying Dutchman assigns SpongeBob and Patrick to make the ship look scary for their haunting mission to Bikini Bottom. The two completely misunderstand his instructions, debating whether he wants the ship to look good and scary, or so good it becomes scary, or so scary they forget it does not look good. Their confusion frustrates the Dutchman, who simply wants mold on the ceilings and bugs in the sink. When the Dutchman attempts to howl dramatically to inspire fear, SpongeBob bleats like a sheep, while Patrick yodels "leedle leedle leedle lee" repeatedly. Patrick's yodeling continues, cutting off the Dutchman's attempts at proper howling, creating an awkward silence that demonstrates how incompetent his new crew members are. Their attempts at scaring Bikini Bottom residents fail completely. SpongeBob performs finger tricks instead of looking frightening. Patrick shakes a gray board while SpongeBob blows bubbles. They repeatedly crash the ship through rocks, with SpongeBob cheerfully saying, "You're good, you're good, you're good," as the vessel gets destroyed. The Flying Dutchman grows increasingly annoyed watching his terrible crew in action. The threat of being eaten. After their failed haunting mission, the Flying Dutchman calls SpongeBob and Patrick to his quarters. They excitedly speculate about receiving rewards like movie passes or oversized coffee mugs, bouncing around with enthusiasm. The Dutchman orders them to stop bouncing, and they freeze instantly in midair. He explains the crew arrangement is not working out, though he clarifies it is not really them, but rather him. When SpongeBob hopefully asks if they are being set free, the Dutchman delivers chilling news. He plans to eat them instead. He casually mentions seeing them at dinner before closing the door, leaving them trapped and terrified. The escape through the perfume department. Patrick suggests they simply leave, but SpongeBob points out the door is locked. The only exit leads through a perfume department, shown as live-action footage of an actual store. This jarring shift from animation to reality creates an unsettling effect, blurring the lines between the cartoon world and ours. SpongeBob and Patrick run through the department, getting sprayed with perfume at every turn. Someone removes Patrick's gas mask to spray him directly in the face. One spray even goes into SpongeBob's mouth. When they emerge, both are panting, with SpongeBob declaring he always hates going in there. This bizarre sequence adds surreal horror to their desperate escape attempt. The dining sock bargaining. SpongeBob and Patrick overhear the Flying Dutchman writing in his diary about planning to eat them tomorrow. He mentions making brown sauce and finding his dining sock, which he needs to eat. Without the sock, he could not eat for a whole week. The two steal the dining sock, giving them leverage against the ghost. When the Dutchman tries to zap SpongeBob, SpongeBob holds up the sock as protection. As they struggle over it, the Dutchman panics about them, stretching out the elastic. Patrick observes they have reached an impasse, forcing the Dutchman to negotiate. The 3 wishes. The Flying Dutchman offers 3 wishes in exchange for his dining sock back. Patrick attempts to bargain, saying to make it 5 wishes. The Dutchman counters with 4. Patrick then says 3, creating the absurd situation where he negotiated downward to the original offer. The Dutchman agrees to 3 wishes, bemused by Patrick's backwards bargaining. SpongeBob excitedly tells Patrick about their 3 wishes. Patrick immediately responds by saying he wishes they had known about the wishes earlier. The clock literally moves backward 1 minute as the wish is granted, wasting their first opportunity. The Flying Dutchman informs them they now have only 2 wishes left, while Patrick smiles with embarrassment at an angry SpongeBob. Rescuing Squidward. SpongeBob wishes Squidward were there to see the wishes. The wish immediately pulls Squidward out of the fly of despair, where he had been falling through the nightmare dimension surrounded by floating spaghetti and meatballs. He crashes onto his bed, relieved that his ordeal is over, only to disappear and reappear on the ghost ship. When SpongeBob realizes he just used the second wish, Squidward demands the last wish belongs to him since SpongeBob got him back into the mess. Patrick argues the wish belongs to him because his first wish did not count as a real wish. All 3 begin arguing loudly, their voices devolving into incoherent yelling and shouting. The 3 different endings. The Flying Dutchman decides to use the eeny meeny miny mo method to determine who gets the final wish. This is where the episode originally became interactive, with viewers calling a phone number or visiting a website to vote for which character should win. The episode was broadcast with 3 different endings depending on which character received the most votes. In SpongeBob's ending, he wishes the Flying Dutchman becomes a vegetarian so the ghost cannot eat them. The wish works, transforming the Dutchman into a fit, healthy vegetarian eating celery. However, SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward find themselves transformed into fruits in a blender. Squidward has become a banana, SpongeBob a strawberry, and Patrick a bunch of grapes. The Flying Dutchman reveals he also gets a wish, explaining that fruit prevents scurvy. He chases them around the ship, which has now become a hippie-themed vehicle. In Patrick's ending, he wishes for gum. Squidward is horrified that Patrick wasted their only chance at freedom on chewing gum. Patrick explains that if they will be trapped forever, they might as well have fresh breath. All 3 end up eaten by the Flying Dutchman anyway, with only their clothes remaining on a plate. Inside the Dutchman's belly, they complain and beg to be released, while the ghost simply enjoys his minty fresh meal. In Squidward's ending, he wishes he had never met SpongeBob and Patrick in his entire life. The wish is granted, but not in the way Squidward intended. SpongeBob and Patrick suddenly do not recognize him, introducing themselves as if meeting for the first time. When Squidward protests this is not what he meant, the Flying Dutchman points out that introductions are complete, so it is time for dinner. All 3 are eaten, and inside the Dutchman's belly, SpongeBob politely asks Squidward his name again, as they will have plenty of time to get to know each other. Why this episode disturbs. Shanghaied presents several layers of horror that work together to create genuine unease. The concept of eternal servitude to a ghost pirate plays on fears of losing freedom and identity. The characters are trapped with no clear way out, facing either endless boring labor or being eaten alive. The Fly of Despair represents one of the most disturbing concepts in SpongeBob history. Squidward falls through an endless void surrounded by surreal imagery, screaming the entire time. When SpongeBob's wish rescues him, Squidward has been falling through this nightmare dimension for what seems like hours or days. The psychological trauma of such an experience would be devastating. The multiple endings all result in bad outcomes for the characters. Even when they seem to win, the Flying Dutchman finds ways to punish them. SpongeBob's vegetarian wish backfires when they become fruit. Patrick's gum wish accomplishes nothing. Squidward's wish to never have met his neighbors traps him in the Dutchman's belly with strangers for eternity. No matter what they choose, they cannot escape their fate. The episode's cultural impact. Shanghaied became famous for its interactive voting format, which made viewers feel invested in the outcome. The fact that all three endings resulted in the characters being eaten or transformed into food added dark comedy to the horror. The episode demonstrated that SpongeBob could tackle mature themes while maintaining its characteristic humor. The Fly of Despair became an iconic element of SpongeBob lore, representing the show's willingness to venture into genuinely unsettling territory. The image of Squidward falling endlessly through space surrounded by floating pasta remains memorable for viewers who watched the episode as children. Patrick's "Leedle Leedle Leedle Lee" yodeling became a popular internet meme, showing how the episode balanced its darker elements with absurd humor. The scene where the Flying Dutchman repeatedly tries to howl while Patrick keeps interrupting him demonstrates the show's skill at subverting expectations. The Flying Dutchman as a villain. The Flying Dutchman works effectively as an antagonist because he operates by supernatural rules the characters cannot understand or fight against. His Ghost Rule book establishes that anyone boarding his ship becomes his crew forever, giving his actions legitimacy within his own moral framework. He is not simply cruel, but following the laws of his ghostly existence. His willingness to eat his crew members shows the stakes are real. This is not a villain who will eventually be reasoned with or befriend the heroes. He views SpongeBob and Patrick as incompetent employees and decides to eat them like one might fire underperforming workers. The casual way he announces his intention to eat them adds to the horror. The dining sock detail humanizes him slightly while emphasizing his alien nature. He cannot eat without this specific sock, a quirk that seems arbitrary but is absolutely essential to him. This vulnerability allows SpongeBob and Patrick to negotiate, but it also shows how different the Dutchman's reality is from theirs. Shanghaied remains one of SpongeBob SquarePants' darkest and most creative episodes. Its exploration of eternal damnation, supernatural horror, and the futility of escape creates genuine tension. The interactive voting format made viewers complicit in the character's fate, adding another layer to the experience. The episode succeeds because it commits fully to its premise without softening the horror. The characters face real consequences with no easy solutions. Even their wishes backfire in ways that emphasize their powerlessness. The Fly of Despair, the threat of being eaten, and the multiple bad endings all contribute to an atmosphere of inescapable doom. For a children's cartoon, Shanghaied pushed boundaries by showing that sometimes the heroes do not win. Sometimes they get trapped on a ghost ship, fall through dimensional voids, and end up eaten or transformed into fruit. The episode's lasting impact demonstrates that young audiences can handle and appreciate darker storytelling when balanced with humor and creativity. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Born Again Krabs, sold to Davy Jones' locker for 62 cents. Born Again Krabs aired on the 4th of October 2003 as part of SpongeBob SquarePants' third season. The episode draws its title from the religious phrase "born again," which refers to someone who experiences a spiritual transformation and changes their ways. Mr. Krabs goes through this exact journey after a near-death experience forces him to face the consequences of his cheapness. The episode begins at closing time. Squidward switches the sign from open to closed and celebrates because he gets to leave work. Meanwhile, SpongeBob cries in the kitchen because closing time makes him sad. He spots an old Krabby Patty stuck under the grill with gum attached to it. The patty is cold, hard, and covered in mold. SpongeBob estimates it could have been under there for years. He pats it gently and tosses it in the trash, thinking he is putting the old burger out of its misery. A siren immediately goes off. A fishing line retrieves the patty from the trash can. Mr. Krabs runs into the kitchen and demands to know who tried to throw away a perfectly good patty. His invention, the Pinchomatic, saved him exactly 5.2 cents by preventing the patty from being wasted. SpongeBob tries to explain that he found the patty under the grill, but Mr. Krabs orders him to serve it to a customer the next day. He tells SpongeBob he cannot make another patty until that one is sold. The Pinchomatic security system. The Pinchomatic represents Mr. Krabs' obsession with saving money taken to an extreme level. The device consists of a trash bin with a hook attached to the ceiling that automatically retrieves any discarded item. A separate buzzer and red alarm bell mounted on the wall alert Mr. Krabs whenever someone tries to throw something away. The machine speaks in a robotic voice to inform Mr. Krabs exactly how much money he saved. This security system shows how far Mr. Krabs will go to avoid losing even small amounts of money. He installed an entire alarm system just to prevent his employees from throwing away food that should be tossed out. The Pinch-O-Matic treats garbage as valuable inventory. Mr. Krabs values a nickel more than he values food safety or customer satisfaction. SpongeBob tells Mr. Krabs the patty is old, cold, and very full of mold. Mr. Krabs dismisses his concerns completely. He hands the moldy patty back to SpongeBob and gives him a direct order. SpongeBob must sell that specific patty before making any new ones. This command sets the entire episode in motion. The foggy patty drives away customers. The next day, SpongeBob prepares the moldy patty for service. The patty now has a nickname among the characters, the Foggy Patty. This name comes from the visible fog or mist surrounding the burger due to its advanced state of decay. Flies buzz around the stinking patty when Squidward lifts the top bun to examine it. Squidward sarcastically asks SpongeBob if he can get one with less fog. SpongeBob apologizes and says he must follow Mr. Krabs' orders. Squidward reluctantly hands the tray to a customer named Gus. The customer takes one sniff of the moldy patty and screams in horror. He backflips out of the restaurant in disgust. His reaction is immediate and extreme. He does not take a single bite or even touch the burger. The smell alone is enough to send him running. This scene marks the beginning of the Krusty Krab's downfall. The episode jumps forward in time to show that the restaurant has not had a customer in weeks. The business is completely dead because Mr. Krabs refuses to throw away the spoiled patty. Customers spread the word about the disgusting food, and nobody wants to eat there anymore. Mr. Krabs stands with SpongeBob and Squidward, confused about why business is so bad. He wonders if the problem is the new placemats. Squidward explodes in frustration at this ridiculous suggestion. He tells Mr. Krabs the old patty he keeps trying to sell everybody has gone bad. The placemats have nothing to do with it. The patty becomes sentient. Mr. Krabs dismisses Squidward's concerns and demands to see the patty. SpongeBob brings out a cage with the foggy patty locked inside. Mr. Krabs asks why the patty is in a cage. SpongeBob explains that it growled at him. The patty has become sentient and behaves like a wild animal. It growls and barks like a dog when Mr. Krabs opens the cage. Squidward hides behind Mr. Krabs in fear. This detail pushes the horror element of the episode to a new level. The patty is not just moldy and disgusting. It has developed some form of life or consciousness. The burger snarls and snaps at the characters. It has become dangerous. Any reasonable person would immediately throw it away or even call for help. Mr. Krabs does neither of these things. Instead, Mr. Krabs treats the aggressive patty like a pet dog. He tells SpongeBob and Squidward they would never have lasted in the Navy. He takes the patty out of its cage and tries to calm it down. The patty continues to bark and growl in his face. Mr. Krabs tells it to stay and throws a small treat into its mouth. The patty eats the treat and calms down. Mr. Krabs pats it gently and declares it good enough to eat. Mr. Krabs eats the rotten patty. An ambulance drives by the restaurant right before Mr. Krabs eats the patty. This detail adds dark comedy to the scene. The ambulance seems to know what is about to happen. The medical professionals are already on their way because they know Mr. Krabs will need emergency care. Mr. Krabs notices the ambulance but dismisses it. He takes a bite of the spoiled, moldy, sentient Krabby Patty. The scene immediately cuts to Mr. Krabs being rushed to the hospital on a gurney. His entire body has turned green from food poisoning. He moans in pain as he is wheeled into the hospital. Even in this condition, Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob to wrap up the rest of the patty because he is not finished with it yet. His cheapness overrides his concern for his own health. This moment demonstrates how Mr. Krabs' greed has completely consumed his judgment. He nearly dies from food poisoning and still thinks the patty is worth saving. He would rather risk death than lose 5.2 cents. The patty has already cost him weeks of business at the Krusty Krab. It has made him seriously ill. It has turned into a growling monster. None of these consequences matter to Mr. Krabs compared to saving a few cents. The doctor's terrifying reaction. At the hospital, a purple doctor fish examines Mr. Krabs. The doctor tells Mr. Krabs he gave them quite a scare. Mr. Krabs asks if he will be okay. The doctor suggests they check his medical chart to be sure. The doctor looks at the chart and his entire demeanor changes. He starts shaking and repeating that this is terrible. He drops the clipboard and screams. Mr. Krabs asks if everything is okay. The doctor yells at him not to touch him and runs out of the room screaming. This reaction is played for dark comedy but also builds tension. The doctor's fear suggests Mr. Krabs is in serious danger. Medical professionals see terrible things every day and remain calm. For a doctor to run away screaming means something truly horrible is about to happen. Mr. Krabs recognizes this is not a good sign. He sits alone in his hospital bed, waiting for what comes next. Thunder roars and the room turns green. The Flying Dutchman materializes in the hospital room with an evil laugh. Mr. Krabs pulls his covers over his head in fear. The supernatural has arrived to claim Mr. Krabs for his sins. Meeting the Flying Dutchman. The Flying Dutchman is a ghost who haunts the ocean in SpongeBob SquarePants. He resembles a pirate with a green, ghostly glow, yellow eyes with black irises, a scraggly beard, and a pirate hat. He captains a ghost ship and appears throughout the series as a powerful supernatural entity. The character is named after the legendary ghost ship from maritime folklore. In the show, the Flying Dutchman serves as a grim reaper figure for the underwater world. He collects souls and determines who goes to Davy Jones's locker, which is the show's version of the underworld or hell. The Flying Dutchman acts as judge and executioner for those who have lived immoral lives. He is voiced by Brian Doyle Murray, who gives the character a menacing yet sometimes comedic presence. The Flying Dutchman announces that Eugene Krabs' time has come. Mr. Krabs panics and claims he is not Eugene Krabs. He looks around desperately for a fake name and spots a flower vase next to his bed. He announces his name is Harold Flower. The Flying Dutchman apologizes for having the wrong room and leaves. He asks a nurse for directions to Eugene Krabs' room. The nurse tells him Krabs is in that room and asks who Harold Flower is. The Flying Dutchman realizes he has been tricked and returns to the room in anger. Davy Jones's locker explained. The Flying Dutchman announces he is here to escort Mr. Krabs to Davy Jones's locker, the resting place of all bad undersea folk. Mr. Krabs asks why he has to go there, since he is not a bad crab. The Flying Dutchman explains that Mr. Krabs was cheap, and being cheap is a terrible thing. This is the moral center of the episode. In the world of SpongeBob SquarePants, extreme greed and cheapness are serious enough sins to warrant eternal punishment. The Flying Dutchman transports Mr. Krabs to Davy Jones's locker. Mr. Krabs immediately smells something foul. The Flying Dutchman explains that Davy Jones works out a lot, and these are his gym socks. The locker is literally a gym locker filled with smelly socks. This joke takes the nautical phrase, Davy Jones locker, and makes it literal for comedic effect. In real maritime folklore, Davy Jones's locker is a metaphor for the bottom of the ocean where drowned sailors and shipwrecks end up. The phrase dates back to at least 1726. SpongeBob SquarePants transforms this dark concept into a visual gag while maintaining its meaning as a place of eternal punishment. The gym locker filled with disgusting socks serves as torture for anyone trapped inside. The Flying Dutchman orders Mr. Krabs to get in the locker. Mr. Krabs falls to his knees crying and begging. He does not want to go in there. He pleads for another chance and calls out for his mother. The Flying Dutchman tells him to show a little dignity. Mr. Krabs is completely broken down by fear. His usual confidence and aggression disappear when facing eternal punishment. The second chance deal. The Flying Dutchman agrees to give Mr. Krabs another chance, but with strict conditions. Mr. Krabs must always be generous and never cheap. Mr. Krabs gives his word as a sailor. This promise sets up the second half of the episode. The audience knows Mr. Krabs will struggle to keep this promise because greed defines his entire character. The scene cuts to the Krusty Krab. The restaurant is dilapidated and has an out-of-business sign hanging over it. Mr. Krabs' absence and the moldy patty incident have destroyed the business completely. Squidward goes through Mr. Krabs' belongings, looking for things to take. He finds nose hair clippers and decides he could use them. He tries to open the safe using a stethoscope to hear the tumblers. SpongeBob wears his Krusty Krab employee hat and holds his spatula while crying. He tells Squidward not to go through Mr. Krabs' belongings because he will not like it. Squidward reminds SpongeBob that the doctor said Mr. Krabs is not coming back. SpongeBob refuses to accept this and keeps crying over his boss, the new Mr. Krabs. Mr. Krabs walks into the Krusty Krab and announces he is back. SpongeBob screams with joy and clings to Mr. Krabs happily. Squidward sheepishly hides the stethoscope behind his back. SpongeBob celebrates that Mr. Krabs is alive and tells Squidward to look. He says this is too good to be true. Squidward responds in a deadpan voice that it was too good. Mr. Krabs explains that being sick made him do a lot of thinking. His whole life has been about money. Saving money, collecting money, touching money. He says the employees are looking at the new, improved, non-cheap Mr. Krabs. This transformation seems impossible based on everything the audience knows about the character. The episode shows the Krusty Krab with a giant grand reopening sign outside. Signs advertising buy and free hang in the windows. Inside, a banner reading "Celebrate Good Times" hangs over the main doors. Mr. Krabs welcomes everyone back and hands out free toys to children. He offers free refills on drinks. The customers cheer at this generous treatment. Mr. Krabs asks SpongeBob where Squidward is. SpongeBob explains that Squidward is taking a break in the employee lounge, which used to be Mr. Krabs' office. The scene cuts to Squidward sleeping peacefully in a bed. Mr. Krabs has transformed his private office into a comfortable break room for his employees. Free everything. A customer drops her Krabby Patty on the floor and asks for another one. SpongeBob starts to read a disclaimer written in ketchup on the burger that explains the Krusty Krab policy. Once a burger reaches the customer, it becomes their responsibility. Mr. Krabs interrupts and tells SpongeBob that is the old policy. He instructs SpongeBob to make a fresh patty. The customer looks confused by this generous treatment. Mr. Krabs continues offering free items and services throughout the day. One customer watches a movie on a small television hanging from the ceiling. Mr. Krabs asks if he is enjoying his in-meal movie. The customer responds that the movie has not even been in theaters yet. Mr. Krabs pats him on the back and says no expense is spared for his valued customers. He has provided brand new movies for free entertainment. Squidward returns from his break and hands Mr. Krabs his mail. Mr. Krabs thanks him and comments that he looks rested. Squidward agrees that these naps at work are doing wonders for him. He stretches and yawns contentedly. This exchange shows how much the workplace has improved under the new generous Mr. Krabs. The $10,000 reality check. Mr. Krabs opens his mail and finds credit card bills. He expected this and opens the envelope to check the damage. The bill is for $10,000. Mr. Krabs says this is not so bad and walks to the cash register. He plans to subtract the bill from the day's profits. He opens the register but finds it completely empty. There is no money inside at all. Mr. Krabs laughs and says how delightful this is. SpongeBob and Squidward become worried about Mr. Krabs. They notice his strange reaction to having no money. Squidward comments that Mr. Krabs is taking total bankruptcy well. Mr. Krabs dismisses their concerns and explains this is just a bad dream. He will wake up soon. SpongeBob and Squidward look at each other in shock. Squidward asks what Mr. Krabs means by dream. Mr. Krabs explains that he is sure he is still in the hospital, sleeping like a baby. The entire generous phase has been based on Mr. Krabs believing none of it was real. He thought he could give away everything for free because he would eventually wake up and none of the consequences would matter. SpongeBob tells Mr. Krabs that he checked out of the hospital that morning. Squidward hands him the hospital bill as proof. Mr. Krabs realizes he is awake. He screams in horror as his head cracks through the middle over and over. Each time he cracks his head open, a new one appears underneath. This visual represents his mind breaking from the stress of losing all his money. The return to greed. Mr. Krabs instantly transforms back into his cheap self. He races up to a customer drinking a soda and takes it away, announcing no more refills. He holds the drink up to the soda machine, which sucks the liquid back inside like a vacuum. He runs up to children playing with toys and swipes them back, calling them freeloaders. He rushes over to a customer watching a movie and presses a button on the remote that rewinds the TV and erases the customer's memory of the film. A customer named Nathiel Waters spots a penny on the ground and reaches for it, saying it is his lucky day. Mr. Krabs grabs his arm and tells him his luck just ran out. The customer tells Mr. Krabs to ease back because he is crushing his arm. Mr. Krabs demands he unhand the penny or the arm comes off. He is willing to seriously injure or even remove a customer's arm for a single penny. The Flying Dutchman reappears with thunder crashing. The customer runs away in fear. The Flying Dutchman announces that this display of parsimonious penny pinching just earned Mr. Krabs a spot in Davy Jones's locker for eternity. The word parsimonious means extremely cheap or unwilling to spend money. The Flying Dutchman uses formal language to condemn Mr. Krabs' behavior. SpongeBob's bet. Mr. Krabs claims he is not cheap but generous. Squidward immediately contradicts him, pointing out that he almost tore a man's arm off for a penny. Mr. Krabs sarcastically thanks Squidward for his support. The Flying Dutchman picks up Mr. Krabs, and Mr. Krabs accepts that a deal is a deal. They prepare to leave. SpongeBob stops them and announces they should wait just a burger-flipping second. The Flying Dutchman turns around and demands to know who dares backsass him. SpongeBob introduces himself as SpongeBob Backsass Pants, a play on his regular name. He insists the Flying Dutchman has the wrong crab. This Mr. Krabs is the most generous, big-hearted, non-skin-flinted crab in the whole sea. While SpongeBob speaks, Mr. Krabs looks happy at these kind words. The Flying Dutchman gets in SpongeBob's face and tells him that Mr. Krabs would sell his soul for a couple of bucks. SpongeBob bets his soul that Mr. Krabs would not do that. The Flying Dutchman accepts the bet. He tells Mr. Krabs he will let him stay, but first he needs help settling a bet. If Mr. Krabs had to choose between SpongeBob and all the money in the Flying Dutchman's pocket, which would he take? Mr. Krabs asks how much money they are talking about. This question already reveals his priorities. He does not immediately choose SpongeBob. He needs to know the exact amount of money before making his decision. The Flying Dutchman shows him 6 coins totaling 62 cents. Mr. Krabs says he will take the money. SpongeBob is shocked and hurt. Traded for 62 cents, the Flying Dutchman hands Mr. Krabs the 62 cents and picks up SpongeBob. He announces their next stop is Davy Jones's locker and disappears with SpongeBob screaming. Mr. Krabs runs to Squidward with the money, happy to have gained 62 cents. Squidward tells Mr. Krabs he cannot believe he is saying this, but how could he trade SpongeBob for 62 cents? Mr. Krabs asks if Squidward thinks he could have gotten more. Squidward explains that SpongeBob stuck up for Mr. Krabs and he sold him out. He should be ashamed of himself. This is one of the rare moments when Squidward defends SpongeBob and shows genuine moral outrage. The situation is so terrible that even Squidward, who usually dislikes SpongeBob, cannot accept what Mr. Krabs has done. Mr. Krabs looks at the change sadly and starts to cry. He realizes what he has done and wants another chance. He did not learn anything from his experience. He lost his best fry cook. He throws the money on the ground and declares he does not want this foul money. He wants SpongeBob back. The unbearable SpongeBob. The Flying Dutchman reappears and drops SpongeBob on the floor. He tells Mr. Krabs to take him back. Mr. Krabs asks if the Flying Dutchman heard what he said about the money. The Flying Dutchman explains he could not hear himself thinking with SpongeBob around. He only had SpongeBob for 30 seconds. The episode cuts to a flashback showing SpongeBob at Davy Jones's locker talking constantly. He rambles about jellyfishing and Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy at super speed without stopping. The Flying Dutchman explains that SpongeBob kept going on about jellyfishing and Mermaid Man. Not giving him back is a fate worse than death. He is now Mr. Krabs' problem again. The Flying Dutchman laughs evilly and disappears. This ending provides a comedic resolution while avoiding a real moral lesson for Mr. Krabs. He does not learn to value SpongeBob more than money. He gets SpongeBob back only because SpongeBob is too annoying for even the Flying Dutchman to handle. The episode suggests Mr. Krabs has not truly changed at all. Mr. Krabs tries to apologize for trading SpongeBob for pocket change. SpongeBob tells him to say no more. He understands Mr. Krabs did it for the Krusty Krab and he would have done the same thing. Mr. Krabs asks if SpongeBob really would have done the same. SpongeBob simply says no. All three characters laugh together as the episode ends. The final scene shows the Flying Dutchman at home, sitting in a chair reading a book. The phone rings, and he answers it. SpongeBob is on the other end talking at super speed about hanging out and listing all the nights he is available. The Flying Dutchman groans in frustration as SpongeBob continues talking about working at the Krusty Krab and his best friend Patrick. The episode ends with the Flying Dutchman suffering the consequences of his interaction with SpongeBob, suggesting that sometimes the punishment fits the crime in unexpected ways. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Procrastination, the assignment that started it all. Procrastination aired on the 19th of October, 2001, as part of SpongeBob SquarePants' second season. The episode explores a universal struggle that nearly everyone faces at some point in their lives, putting off important work until the last possible moment. SpongeBob receives a homework assignment and spends an entire night doing everything except writing his essay. The episode begins in Mrs. Puff's boating school classroom. Mrs. Puff tells the class to quiet down and get out their pencils and paper. The class groans when they hear they have an assignment. SpongeBob leans toward his classmate Nat and excitedly announces that they get an assignment. His enthusiasm stands in stark contrast to everyone else's displeasure. Mrs. Puff explains the assignment. Everyone must write an essay on what not to do at a stoplight. The class groans again. SpongeBob again leans toward Nat and repeats what Mrs. Puff just said about stoplights. Mrs. Puff adds that the essay must be no less than 800 words. She squeals excitedly while the class groans for a third time. Nat mockingly imitates SpongeBob by asking if he heard that it needs to be 800 words. SpongeBob enthusiastically confirms he knows. Nat frowns at his attitude. Mrs. Puff announces the essay is due tomorrow. She reminds the class to work hard and avoid goofing off. This warning sets up the entire premise of the episode. SpongeBob will do the exact opposite of what Mrs. Puff instructed. SpongeBob's confidence and the perfect setup. The scene transitions to SpongeBob's house. SpongeBob sits at his desk and tells Gary to avoid goofing off. He announces he is about to write the greatest essay of all time. He explains that, like most great essays, it will be written on paper. He places the paper on his desk with great ceremony. He holds up a pencil and declares it even more important than the paper. He can make the pencil as sharp or as dull as he likes. SpongeBob talks to the pencil directly. He comments that as his ideas grow, the pencil shrinks. He kisses the pencil and little hearts fly out of it. This romantic relationship with his writing tools shows how much SpongeBob genuinely loves the idea of doing this assignment. He looks out the window and says he could not have asked for a more beautiful day to write an essay. The weather outside is colorful and perfect. SpongeBob begins writing and narrates each word as he writes it. He writes the title, "What Not to Do at a Stoplight." He comments that this is easy. He then writes his byline, "By SpongeBob SquarePants." He laughs and declares this essay is pure gold. He tells the pencil to get ready to do its stuff, because here they go. The clock appears on screen. Several hours pass. SpongeBob has still only written those opening words. He realizes this is harder than he thought. He looks outside where everyone is having fun. Patrick applies lotion on Sandy's shoulders and calls for SpongeBob to join them. SpongeBob forces himself to go back to his desk. The first wave of distractions. SpongeBob complains that it should be against the law to have to write an essay on such a super sailorific, sunshiny day. He groans but tells himself he must press onward. He reminds himself that with this pencil and the completion of this essay, he will be one step closer to his driver's license. A live-action drag race plays in his imagination. A car hits a wall, tumbles, and gets back up. SpongeBob tells himself this will be no problem. He has plenty of time since it is only 6 o'clock. He tries to begin writing but struggles. He decides he just needs to get a little blood pumping in the old noodle. He suggests doing some calisthenics to wake up his brain. SpongeBob does exercises while reciting Hup-Hoo several times. His nose and eyelashes also do the movements and make the sounds. He announces he can feel those juices pumping now. He moves his chair closer to the table. He then squeaks his chair back and forth over and over. He laughs at the squeaking sound. He suddenly gasps in realization and asks himself what he is doing. He must write that paper. He pushes his chair in and commands the pencil to make words. Gary meows from another room. SpongeBob immediately abandons his work and calls out to Gary. He asks how his favorite mollusk is doing. He offers to fix Gary something to eat. Gary meows in response. SpongeBob asks what Gary means by saying he is not hungry. Gary meows again. SpongeBob admits he knows he has an essay to write, but insists Gary needs to eat. The excessive Gary feeding scene. SpongeBob grabs Gary by his shell and pours him some food. He climbs up a ladder and fills Gary's bowl all the way to ceiling level. He explains he must make sure Gary gets his nutrition, so he will not leave until Gary eats every single bite. Gary quickly eats all the food in seconds. SpongeBob stutters in surprise at how fast Gary finished. SpongeBob asks if Gary is sure he does not want some creme brulee or chocolate-flavored algae bits. He accidentally steps on Gary's spilled food. He notices Gary made a mess. He declares he cannot work on his essay knowing there is a mess in the kitchen. He cleans it up by using himself as a mop. He decides he might as well clean the rest of the floor while he is at it. The episode shows SpongeBob cleaning various areas of his kitchen. He gets the hard-to-reach places. He cleans the dishes. He even sprays the garbage can because he cannot have dirty garbage. He finally finishes and announces he thinks it is clean enough now. The kitchen is shown to be sparkling chrome. Everything shines perfectly. SpongeBob comments that the cleaning did not take too long. He checks the time and sees it is 10 o'clock. He groans in frustration. No more fooling around. He must get back to work. He walks to his desk with renewed determination. The single word. SpongeBob addresses the essay directly. He tells Mr. Essay to prepare to be written. The tip of his pencil is shown approaching the paper like a diving fighter plane. It finally makes contact with the paper. SpongeBob announces he is doing it. A time lapse begins. He keeps saying yeah while poking the paper with the pencil. He adds some of these and some of those. The camera zooms in on SpongeBob's face. He announces he is almost there. He finishes writing, and the tip of the pencil is smoking from the effort. SpongeBob declares he is done. He straightens the papers to see how it looks so far. The word "the" appears on the screen. He has only written the word "the" in fancy decorative lettering. Hours of work produced a single 3-letter word. SpongeBob announces it is break time. Pacing always helps him think. He calculates that he only has 799 words to go. He tells himself to think. He looks at the telephone. The scene cuts to Patrick in bed, snoring peacefully. The phone rings and wakes him up. Patrick makes startled sounds and picks up the phone. He answers with a groggy hello. The Patrick phone call. SpongeBob asks Patrick what he is up to. Patrick responds that he was sleeping. SpongeBob says this is really fascinating. He asks if Patrick is having a good sleep and if he has any dreams to discuss. Patrick interrupts before SpongeBob can finish. Patrick tells SpongeBob they both know he is just using him as a distraction so he does not have to write his essay. SpongeBob gasps and stutters in denial. He claims that is not true. He called to have an engaging conversation with Patrick. Patrick says he is listening and waits for SpongeBob to say something interesting. SpongeBob can only think to say, Marco. Patrick responds, Polo, and immediately hangs up the phone. SpongeBob tells the dial tone that he has to get going because he has an important essay to write. He hangs up and glares. He calls Patrick a chatterbox and asks if Patrick cannot see that he is busy. This moment is darkly comedic because SpongeBob called Patrick and then blames him for wasting time. SpongeBob returns to his desk. Eraser shavings cover the page. He complains he cannot write with all these eraser shavings on his paper. He swats the shavings away, but they float above the paper. He complains they are now floating around his thinking space. He blows them away and says goodbye to the pesky particles. The eraser shaving crisis. The shavings angrily float back to SpongeBob. He struggles to wave them away. He accidentally swallows one in the process. He announces he swallowed one and is choking. He runs to the kitchen yelling for water. He drinks from the sink and declares that was a close one. Gary meows at him. SpongeBob asks what Gary means by calling him overly dramatic. He rubs his stomach. All that choking made him hungry. Gary meows again. SpongeBob insists he cannot write on an empty stomach. He needs his brain food. He opens the refrigerator and examines his options. He debates between white or rye bread or pumpernickel. He says it really depends on the meat inside and the cheese. The doorbell rings before he can make a decision. SpongeBob gets excited about having a visitor. He opens the door to meet Norton, the male fish. SpongeBob greets him enthusiastically. Norton announces he has a package for Mr. SquarePants. SpongeBob thanks him and asks if he likes delivering mail. Norton responds that it puts bread on the table. SpongeBob makes a joke by asking if it is rye or pumpernickel bread. He laughs at his own joke. Norton responds with, "Oh, brother," in annoyance. The mailman conversation. SpongeBob continues asking Norton questions. He wants to know if Norton delivers his own mail or if he has his own mail person. But then, who delivers that person's mail? Is there a never-ending chain of mailmen delivering mail to other mailmen? SpongeBob suggests that a P.O. box could, in theory, break the chain. Norton interrupts SpongeBob's rambling. He asks if SpongeBob does not have a paper to write. He walks away without waiting for an answer. SpongeBob gulps, and the camera zooms in on his face. He wonders how the mailman knew he is supposed to be writing an essay. He looks around suspiciously and slides backward into his house. The realistic fish head appears on SpongeBob's television. He reports the news. In other news, local resident SpongeBob SquarePants only has a few hours left to complete his essay, and yet he continues to goof off. The head sticks out of the screen and asks when SpongeBob will learn. SpongeBob screams and karate chops the TV. This causes a zap and glass breaking sounds. He lights a candle. This moment marks the transition into the nightmare sequence. The episode shifts from realistic procrastination into surreal horror. SpongeBob's anxiety and guilt manifest as paranoia. He believes everyone knows about his unfinished essay. The TV news report about him specifically pushes this paranoia into absurdity. The nightmare begins. SpongeBob's chair speaks to him. It tells him to come over and take a seat. He should put his feet up and relax. SpongeBob gasps. A bell rings. He realizes it is midnight. He runs through a hallway of clocks. All of the alarms ring at once. He tells himself he must get back to his desk. He runs to the table, but it has enlarged to an enormous size. He jumps up on the chair. He says that was a close call. He then notices his pants are missing. He screams in horror. His pants call up to him from the floor. They say, "Yoo-hoo, down here," in a cheerful voice. SpongeBob demands his pants get up here. He needs to get back to work. The pants run out of SpongeBob's pineapple house toward the door. They yell, "Freedom," as they escape. SpongeBob chases after them and yells for them to stop. He orders them to come back this instant. The door closes behind SpongeBob. He yelps and tries to get back in, but the door is locked. He looks in the window. The clock spins around, breaks, and comes to life. The snail clock speaks in a ghostly voice. It announces that time is up for SpongeBob. SpongeBob gasps and shrieks. The house fire nightmare. The flame of the candle comes to life. SpongeBob yells that he is burning. The fire wick reminds him that he still has 799 words to go. It laughs sinisterly as it burns the essay. SpongeBob screams "no" and watches helplessly. The fire wick sets his entire house on fire. SpongeBob screams and asks what he has done. SpongeBob runs around his house yelling for help. His house is on fire. He continues running around his burning house until the house itself comes to life. The house speaks to SpongeBob directly. It asks why SpongeBob set it on fire. Why did he not just write his essay? The house wails and tells SpongeBob to stop wasting time. This nightmare sequence represents SpongeBob's guilt and anxiety manifesting in the most dramatic way possible. Every object in his life turns against him. His pants abandon him. His clock condemns him. His essay burns. His house blames him. The nightmare shows what happens when procrastination anxiety reaches its peak. SpongeBob feels like everything is falling apart because of his failure to complete one simple task. Waking up, and the final rush. SpongeBob wakes up from the nightmare. He asks where his essay is. He notices the paper stuck to his head. He laughs and says he must have dozed off. He grabs the paper from his head and checks where he left off. The word "the" is still the only thing written. He puts the paper down on the desk. He asks himself if he dares look at the clock. He slowly turns his head and looks at the time. He gasps. It is almost 9 o'clock. Class starts in 5 minutes. He panics about how he will write this whole paper in 5 minutes. He asks himself how he is supposed to know what not to do at a stoplight. Suddenly, SpongeBob realizes something. Feeding your snail is something not to do at a stoplight. He begins writing frantically. He lists everything he did during the night, making a sandwich, lighting candles, drinking water, calling friends, karate chopping the TV, shooting the breeze with the mailman, falling asleep. Every single distraction becomes material for his essay. This moment is brilliant because it shows that SpongeBob's procrastination actually gave him the content he needed. All the things he did to avoid writing became the things he wrote about. His night of distraction was not wasted after all. It provided him with 800 words of real experiences about things you should not do at a stoplight. The devastating ending. SpongeBob runs to the boating school. He calls out for Mrs. Puff. He announces he is finished. All 800 words. He has completed the assignment. He goes inside the school, but nobody is there. He asks where everybody is. Mrs. Puff appears and greets him. SpongeBob hands her the essay, 800 words all about stoplights and what not to do at them. Mrs. Puff apologizes. She tried to call him. She has to go to a teacher's convention. SpongeBob asks about his essay in a panic. Mrs. Puff explains she decided to cancel the assignment. The class is just going to take a field trip to a stoplight instead. She tells him she will see him next week. She leaves SpongeBob standing alone with his completed essay. SpongeBob smiles. He rips his essay in half. Then he rips himself in half as the episode ends. This ending is darkly comedic and captures the ultimate frustration of procrastination. SpongeBob finally finished the work after a night of anxiety and struggle. The assignment no longer matters. All that effort was for nothing. The episode perfectly captures the procrastination experience from start to finish. The initial confidence. The beautiful day that makes working feel impossible. The creative excuses for not starting. The small distractions that consume hours. The mounting anxiety as time runs out. The nightmare of consequences. The final desperate rush to complete the work. And the devastating realization that sometimes it does not even matter. Procrastination stands as one of the most relatable SpongeBob episodes because almost everyone has experienced this exact situation. The episode exaggerates the details for comedy, but the emotional journey feels authentic. SpongeBob does not procrastinate because he is lazy or because he does not care. He genuinely wants to write a great essay. He just cannot make himself start. Every other activity suddenly becomes more important and more urgent than the actual work. The episode also shows how procrastination creates its own cycle. SpongeBob wastes time, which creates anxiety, which makes it harder to work, which leads to more wasted time. By the time he finally sits down to write in earnest, he has minutes instead of hours. The pressure finally forces him to work, but also guarantees the work will be rushed and stressful. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Franken-Doodle. The magic pencil falls from above. Franken-Doodle aired on the 21st of January 2002 as part of SpongeBob SquarePants' second season. The episode explores what happens when SpongeBob and Patrick discover a magic pencil that brings drawings to life. The seemingly innocent fun turns dark when SpongeBob creates a violent doodle version of himself that terrorizes Bikini Bottom. The episode begins above the ocean surface. The French narrator introduces an artist at sea. The narrator explains they will watch and see the fruits of his struggle. Inspiration seems to have struck the artist. The artist hums while drawing. He kisses his pencil in appreciation for his creative tool. He continues making strokes on his canvas. The artist accidentally throws his pencil into the sea. It sinks in the water until it disappears from sight. The artist realizes what happened and searches desperately for the pencil in the water. He leans over the edge of his boat looking for it. The French narrator announces the artist has learned the first lesson of the sea: always bring a spare pencil. The artist screams in despair as his pencil is lost forever. The scene cuts to the pencil dropping through the water. Meanwhile, SpongeBob and Patrick play a game on the ocean floor. They blow bubbles shaped like rock, paper, and scissors. SpongeBob counts to 3, and they both blow their bubble choices. SpongeBob blows a scissors bubble while Patrick blows a paper bubble. SpongeBob announces that scissors beats paper. They both laugh at the game. The discovery of the giant pencil. They prepare for another round. Both count together and blow their bubbles on 3. They both blow paper bubbles this time. SpongeBob asks Patrick why he always does paper. The falling pencil suddenly pops both paper bubbles. It lands in the sand between SpongeBob and Patrick. They both scream and run around in panic. They hide behind SpongeBob's pineapple house, away from the mysterious object. Patrick asks SpongeBob what that thing is. SpongeBob observes that it looks like a giant pencil. Patrick tells SpongeBob to go touch it. SpongeBob extends his arm across the distance and touches the pencil. He confirms it is a giant pencil. He grabs it and suggests they draw some giant pictures with it. Patrick asks what SpongeBob is drawing. SpongeBob tells Patrick to stand back because he cannot draw with Patrick breathing down his neck. Patrick makes a dismissive sound and comments on artists being difficult. SpongeBob announces he is drawing a jellyfish. Patrick examines the finished drawing and gives his critique. He says it is pretty good but lacking basic construction. The perspective leaves a lot to be desired. SpongeBob responds that everybody is a critic. The jellyfish drawing suddenly comes to life. It swims away while buzzing like a real jellyfish. Patrick alerts SpongeBob that his drawing is coming to life. SpongeBob thinks Patrick means the drawing looks lifelike and thanks him for changing his critical tune. Patrick clarifies that he means the jellyfish is literally swimming away. SpongeBob asks Patrick if he knows what this means. Patrick guesses that SpongeBob's art can never hang in a museum. SpongeBob corrects him and announces they found a magic pencil, creating the mustache. Patrick says all he needs now is a magic mustache and all his dreams will have come true. SpongeBob laughs and says he can handle that request. He draws a mustache on Patrick's face. Patrick declares that life is good. The mustache immediately floats off Patrick's face. Patrick shrugs and comments that it is easy come, easy go. The mustache floats towards Squidward's house. Squidward looks at himself in the mirror. He talks to his reflection and says if he had some hair, he would be the most gorgeous creature in the sea. He has looks and talent. All he needs is a full head of hair. The mustache comes in through the window at that exact moment. It rests on Squidward's head like hair. He admires his new look in the mirror. Patrick announces it is his turn to use the pencil. SpongeBob warns him to be careful. Being an artist is a heavy responsibility. Each work of art is like a child and must be treated as such. Patrick says he just wants to draw a cartoon. SpongeBob asks why Patrick did not say so earlier. He hands Patrick the pencil without further argument. Patrick draws a crudely drawn picture. The image shows a figure with a jellyfish-sized stature and a waving fist. SpongeBob comments that it is another jellyfish. Patrick corrects him and says it is Squidward. The badly drawn Squidward comes to life and grumbles at them. SpongeBob observes that it looks kind of creepy when it moves. Patrick agrees and says it is gross. Erasing the first doodle, the badly drawn Squidward starts walking away from them. SpongeBob realizes they cannot let him go into town. Patrick erases the doodle as it screams. Patrick comments on poor Squidward after erasing him. This moment foreshadows the violence that will come later. The episode has already established that these drawings have consciousness and feel pain when erased. SpongeBob's brain hatches an idea. He draws a dollar bill on Squidward's green mat. The dollar is attached to a string. SpongeBob laughs at his prank plan. He declares this is going to be classic. Squidward comes out of his house dressed up. He announces he fancies a stroll around the park. SpongeBob rings the doorbell. Squidward opens the door and asks what SpongeBob wants. He then notices something on his doorstep. Squidward sees the money and assumes someone left him cash for a perm. SpongeBob and Patrick snicker while watching. Squidward reaches for the money and calls out to Harry as a nickname for his new mustache hair. SpongeBob pulls the string. Squidward falls over and the mustache falls off his head. He yells in pain and calls out for SpongeBob. He mourns the loss of his hair as it floats away. He screams SpongeBob's name again. Squidward goes back inside and slams the door. Patrick and SpongeBob laugh while hopping up and down. They suddenly stop when SpongeBob gets another idea. He announces this will be the ultimate prank. He will draw himself, and when Squidward answers the door, it will not actually be him. He draws a doodle version of himself. Patrick laughs at the drawing. The doodle stands up on its own. SpongeBob says the doodle is adorable and calls him a doll. All he needs is a tie to complete the look. DoodleBob's violent introduction. SpongeBob draws a tie on his doodle creation. He declares DoodleBob is ready for action. DoodleBob shouts nonsense words and runs over to Squidward's house. SpongeBob and Patrick laugh while watching. Patrick comments that DoodleBob is going to the door. DoodleBob knocks on Squidward's door. SpongeBob narrates that DoodleBob is knocking on the door. Squidward comes out to answer. SpongeBob continues narrating that Squidward is answering the door. What happens next shocks SpongeBob. DoodleBob picks up Squidward and holds him upside down. He repeatedly pounds Squidward's head on the ground. Patrick is amused by the violence. SpongeBob watches in horror as his creation attacks Squidward. Squidward yells in pain with each impact. Patrick laughs and announces that DoodleBob is beating up Squidward. Patrick and SpongeBob watch as DoodleBob slams Squidward back and forth. SpongeBob yells for DoodleBob to stop. DoodleBob throws Squidward back into his house. Squidward crashes inside and yells in pain again. DoodleBob steals the magic pencil and runs away with it. Patrick states the obvious by announcing DoodleBob has the pencil. SpongeBob asks what he has done. They must find DoodleBob immediately. This moment marks a major shift in the episode. What started as innocent fun has created something dangerous. DoodleBob was supposed to be a harmless prank. Instead, he is violent and aggressive. He attacked Squidward without provocation or reason. The Doodle has the magic pencil now, which means he can create anything he wants. SpongeBob's creation has become his monster. The search for DoodleBob. The scene transitions to SpongeBob and Patrick in a field with tall bushes. SpongeBob wonders where DoodleBob could possibly be. Patrick spots a poorly drawn pineapple and suggests DoodleBob might be inside. SpongeBob tells Patrick to come on. Patrick immediately backs away and says he is not going in there. SpongeBob joins Patrick in hiding in a bush. SpongeBob tells Patrick to come on and that he is right behind him. They should take baby steps. They both stand up while still in the bush. One of Patrick's legs and one of SpongeBob's legs are visible. They walk together toward the drawn pineapple. SpongeBob says they are almost there. DoodleBob suddenly draws a hole in the ground. SpongeBob and Patrick fall into the hole screaming. They crash at the bottom. Patrick asks what just happened. DoodleBob appears above them and speaks in nonsense language. The gibberish sounds aggressive and mocking. SpongeBob tells Patrick to give him a boost up. Patrick asks if they can just stay down in the hole where it is safe. SpongeBob refuses. He created this monster, and he must stop him. A giant wrench drawn by DoodleBob falls on Patrick's head. DoodleBob shouts more nonsense. SpongeBob asks Patrick if he sees what he means. Patrick responds in a dazed state, asking where the leak is. Both try to climb up the hole. They watch as DoodleBob draws a bowling ball from a rock. He rolls it at Patrick. Patrick's head turns into a bowling pin in shock. He screams as the bowling ball hits him. Patrick transforms into several bowling pins. A strike symbol appears in the air. The ball rolls into the hole and hits Patrick again. Another strike symbol appears. SpongeBob asks if Patrick is okay. Patrick responds from off-screen by saying Finland in his dazed state. Patrick's harsh critique. DoodleBob shouts more nonsense and runs off into the distance. The scene transitions to a coral rock wall and a field. SpongeBob whispers that DoodleBob is over there. Patrick says DoodleBob is hideous. He makes Patrick sick just looking at him. Patrick lists DoodleBob's features with disgust. Those big bulgy eyes, that square body, those 2 buck teeth, that stupid tie. SpongeBob looks down at his own body and realizes Patrick is describing him. SpongeBob clears his throat to get Patrick's attention. Patrick blushes awkwardly and quickly backpedals. He says it looks good on SpongeBob though. He laughs nervously. This moment provides dark comedy because Patrick accidentally insults SpongeBob while criticizing the Doodle. DoodleBob is an exact copy of SpongeBob, so any criticism of the doodle applies to the original as well. SpongeBob notices DoodleBob is putting down the pencil. This is their chance to grab it. On the count of 3, they will jump out and surprise him. Patrick gets excited and asks if it is a surprise party. He wants to know if it is DoodleBob's birthday. Before SpongeBob can explain, DoodleBob breaks through the coral rock wall they are hiding behind. DoodleBob shouts nonsense and grabs SpongeBob. SpongeBob yells for Patrick to do something. Patrick wishes DoodleBob a happy birthday. This response shows Patrick completely misunderstood the plan. DoodleBob throws SpongeBob through the air. SpongeBob screams and lands with a thud in the distance. The birthday present attack. Patrick gives DoodleBob a present. He hands him a round rock with 2 blades of seaweed growing on it. DoodleBob bashes the rock on his own head. The impact makes a clunk sound. Patrick tells DoodleBob he is welcome for the gift. DoodleBob screams in nonsense and runs for his life. SpongeBob stops DoodleBob by holding the pencil in his face. SpongeBob tells DoodleBob to hold it right there. He brought DoodleBob into this world, and now he will take him out. He asks if DoodleBob has any last words. DoodleBob speaks nonsense very quickly. SpongeBob stutters and asks what that was. DoodleBob slows his gibberish down while looking unamused. He repeats the nonsense phrase more clearly. DoodleBob starts shouting more gibberish. SpongeBob erases DoodleBob's face while he talks. DoodleBob mutters and hits a rock. SpongeBob tells DoodleBob to hold still because this is for his own good. He begins erasing DoodleBob completely. SpongeBob shouts battle cries while erasing. He tells DoodleBob to take that and this. He keeps repeating that and this until DoodleBob is completely erased. SpongeBob screams in victory and announces he is SpongeBob, destroyer of evil. Patrick tells SpongeBob to take it easy because it is just a drawing. SpongeBob calms down immediately. He says that takes care of that situation. Patrick agrees that the problem is done and done. They walk away satisfied with their victory. The camera reveals that one of DoodleBob's arms survived the erasing. It creeps out from under a rock. The arm returns at night. The scene cuts to nighttime. SpongeBob has just returned home. He uses the magic pencil to draw fancy decorations in his bedroom. He creates a canopy for his bed and other luxury items. He tells Gary that he should have been there. It was exciting, but SpongeBob kind of misses the little doodle. DoodleBob was like a son to him. SpongeBob is glad things are back to normal, though. He wishes Gary goodnight and calls him Sweet Prince. Gary wears a crown and meows. SpongeBob tells the magic pencil goodnight and falls asleep. DoodleBob's arm enters SpongeBob's house. It goes upstairs and takes a bathroom break. Finally, it sneaks up to SpongeBob's bed and grabs the pencil. The arm starts to redraw the rest of DoodleBob's body. SpongeBob wakes up and sees the pencil moving. He asks what the magic pencil is doing up. Maybe it is drawing itself a glass of water. He laughs at his own joke. DoodleBob pops up at the bed fully formed. SpongeBob screams in shock and says DoodleBob's name. He chuckles nervously and asks if there are no hard feelings. DoodleBob draws 2 angry eyebrows on his face. He jumps on SpongeBob's bed while holding the pencil threateningly. SpongeBob screams in terror and asks what DoodleBob thinks he is doing. The role reversal. DoodleBob makes a shocking declaration. He points at SpongeBob and says, "You doodle." He then points at himself and says, "Me SpongeBob." This reversal is disturbing because DoodleBob now claims to be the real one. He believes SpongeBob is the drawing that should be erased. This identity crisis adds psychological horror to the physical violence. SpongeBob screams and jumps out of the way. DoodleBob erases SpongeBob's pillow with the pencil. He chases SpongeBob downstairs while erasing parts of the house. DoodleBob erases a door and the back of SpongeBob's pants. This reveals SpongeBob's rear end. DoodleBob pauses in confusion. He then erases SpongeBob's entire butt. SpongeBob screams and tells DoodleBob to be careful with that thing. Who knows what will happen if he keeps erasing randomly. DoodleBob erases SpongeBob's nose. SpongeBob makes a pun by saying I knows instead of I know. DoodleBob erases more parts of SpongeBob's face and body. DoodleBob laughs at how SpongeBob looks now with missing pieces. SpongeBob says this is very funny and now it is his turn. SpongeBob and DoodleBob struggle over the pencil. The pencil breaks into two pieces during their fight. SpongeBob has the lead part of the pencil. He redraws himself back to normal. SpongeBob tells DoodleBob that it looks like this is a draw. He makes a pun with the word draw, referring to both the stalemate and the act of drawing, trapped in the page. DoodleBob sharpens his piece of the pencil with his mouth. He now has both the sharp end and the eraser end. SpongeBob declares this does not matter because he was voted most artistic in high school. The lead piece flies out of SpongeBob's hand. It crashes through the window and hits Squidward outside. Squidward yells in pain off screen. He announces that SpongeBob will pay for that. SpongeBob reconsiders and says maybe he was voted most clumsy instead. DoodleBob attacks SpongeBob again. SpongeBob hides in a bookshelf. DoodleBob approaches but gets his left foot stuck in a piece of paper on the floor. DoodleBob looks down confused and tries to get the paper off his foot. SpongeBob watches this happen. He looks in a book and suddenly understands. He shouts paper as he realizes the solution. DoodleBob tosses the pencil from his hand while distracted. SpongeBob announces he has a page for Mr. Doodle. He traps DoodleBob inside his notebook. SpongeBob watches as DoodleBob is preserved as a flat drawing. DoodleBob smiles from within the page. The danger has passed. The next morning, SpongeBob hangs the piece of paper with DoodleBob on his wall. He uses a pushpin to secure it beside several other pictures. Patrick arrives and asks about all the noise from last night. SpongeBob tells Patrick to look for himself. Patrick gasps when he sees the evil doodle on the wall. SpongeBob corrects Patrick and says, DoodleBob is not evil. SpongeBob puts on glasses and takes out a pipe. He explains that DoodleBob was just a two-dimensional creature lost in their three-dimensional aquatic world. The doodle was longing for a purpose. SpongeBob blows bubbles from his pipe while delivering this philosophical explanation. Patrick asks if that means DoodleBob is just a drawing. SpongeBob confirms this is exactly right. Patrick looks at a framed picture of the real SpongeBob on the wall. He comments that DoodleBob still looks kind of creepy. Returning the pencil. The final scene shows SpongeBob has drawn a diving board outside. The pencil's broken halves have been taped back together. SpongeBob addresses the magic pencil formally. He says its powers are too mighty for ocean dwellers. He will send it back to the Magic Kingdom, where it came from. He asks if Patrick is ready. Patrick confirms he is ready. SpongeBob drops the pencil into Patrick's mouth. SpongeBob jumps from the diving board onto Patrick's belly. This launches the pencil out of Patrick's mouth like a cannon. The pencil flies back up to the surface. In the real world above water, the artist from earlier is curled up in a fetal position. The French narrator announces they rejoin the artist in a creative slump. The pencil reaches the surface and lands on the artist. He looks confused about what just happened. He jumps up and holds his pencil in joy. He found his pencil. He excitedly tries to draw and says, "Here they go." The pencil lead breaks as soon as it touches the paper. The French narrator explains the second most important rule for the artist at sea. Always bring a pencil sharpener. The artist screams in despair as the episode ends. Franken-Doodle explores the consequences of creation and the relationship between creator and creation. SpongeBob makes DoodleBob as a joke but discovers he cannot control what he has made. The doodle has its own consciousness, motivations, and violent tendencies. The episode asks disturbing questions about identity when DoodleBob declares himself the real SpongeBob. It suggests that copies might believe themselves to be originals. The violence throughout the episode is played for comedy but contains genuinely unsettling moments of existential horror. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Scaredy Pants, Halloween Night in Bikini Bottom. Scaredy Pants aired on the 28th of October, 1999 as part of SpongeBob SquarePants' first season. The episode takes place on Halloween night and explores SpongeBob's desperate attempt to be scary instead of scared. The title is a play on his real name, SquarePants, replacing it with Scaredy Pants to mock his fearful nature. The episode begins during nighttime in Bikini Bottom on Halloween. The camera pans around showing various Halloween decorations and creatures. A skeleton sits on a pirate ship. A spider wears a snorkel. 2 trick-or-treaters walk by, one dressed as a witch and another as a mummy. A ghost floats past. A jack-o'-lantern sits on display. The camera stops at the Krusty Krab. The French narrator explains that Halloween is no different under the waves. Pirates, skeletons, and sea monsters celebrate the holiday. He laughs evilly. You can hear kids saying, "Trick or treat." After coming to the front door of one citizen's house, the narrator says everyone is having fun. A wolf howls in the background. He corrects himself and says almost everyone is having fun. SpongeBob washes dishes in the Krusty Krab kitchen. The door creaks open, and he jumps in surprise. He asks who is there. The door creaks open more as SpongeBob goes back to washing plates. Seconds later, he turns around and sees 3 pieces of paper spelling out "boo" on the ordering turntable. The camera zooms in on them. SpongeBob speeds up his dish cleaning until he finishes in fear. Mr. Krabs' annual scary story. SpongeBob announces the dishes are done and he is leaving. He tries running out of the restaurant, but Mr. Krabs stops him. Mr. Krabs asks if SpongeBob wants to hear his annual scary story. SpongeBob says no, thank you. He asks if it has monsters in it. Mr. Krabs confirms it has the worst monster of them all. SpongeBob says no again. He opens the door, then turns around to ask if it is a true story. Mr. Krabs says it is true as the deep blue. SpongeBob agrees to hear just a little bit. Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob to have a seat. He runs while saying "hot" repeatedly when carrying a burning campfire. He sits on a log and puts the campfire between them. Mr. Krabs explains that every year on Halloween night, the Flying Dutchman descends on Bikini Bottom in a pirate ship. He holds up a Krabby Patty and says the ship looks just like this, only bigger. SpongeBob interrupts to ask if the Flying Dutchman's ship looks like a Krabby Patty. Mr. Krabs continues his story. The Flying Dutchman swoops down and starts stealing people's souls. He takes out a pickle from the Krabby Patty and holds it up. A ghost screams in the background. SpongeBob asks if souls look like pickles. Mr. Krabs confirms that, as a matter of fact, they do. Mr. Krabs explains the Flying Dutchman puts souls where you can never get them. He drops the pickle into a bag that has Krusty Krab crossed out and the word souls written above it. The ghost continues screaming in the background. Mr. Krabs calls this the soul bag. He laughs evilly as Squidward appears in a pirate suit behind SpongeBob. SpongeBob starts feeling uncomfortable and bites his nails. Squidward announces he has come for SpongeBob's pickle. Scaredy Pants gets easier every year. SpongeBob jumps up screaming. Squidward takes off his hat and fake beard. Mr. Krabs laughs and says, "Scaredy Pants gets easier to scare every year." Mr. Krabs and Squidward both laugh as SpongeBob hides in a barrel. He realizes the pirate was just Squidward. SpongeBob says, "Humph, Squidward," in annoyance. Mr. Krabs comments that nothing beats a good ghost story. He hopes SpongeBob is not too scared to come to his party tonight. He calls him SpongeBob Scaredy Pants and laughs while walking out of the Krusty Krab. Squidward walks up behind SpongeBob and tries to scare him again by saying he will steal his soul. SpongeBob screams and jumps out of the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob begins walking home. He sees a jack-o'-lantern. You can hear its evil laugh in the background. SpongeBob starts to whimper and tremble because he got scared of it. 1 second later, he walks up to a kid in a cowboy costume. The The kid says, "Twick, ow, tweet," in a cute voice. SpongeBob screams and runs away. The kid's parents walk up next to their son. The mother tells her son it is okay and that is just SpongeBob's Scaredy Pants. SpongeBob continues walking home until Mrs. Puff drives up and honks the horn. This sends SpongeBob screaming and jumping to hold onto a street light. Mrs. Puff wishes him a happy Halloween and calls him Scaredy Pants. She drives off laughing. SpongeBob yells after her that his name is SquarePants, not Scaredy Pants. The costume plan. The scene transitions to SpongeBob's pineapple house. He and Gary are inside a huge pumpkin. SpongeBob carves it out from the inside. He tells Gary he does not get it. Every Halloween, no matter how hard he tries, everybody scares him. Gary meows in response. SpongeBob says he is sick of it. He comes out of the carved mouth of the pumpkin and announces no more Scaredy Pants. He notices his carved pumpkin and screams while running into his closet. Patrick knocks at the door. SpongeBob tells Gary that Patrick is here and he will scare him. It is his turn now. He opens the door and tries to scare Patrick by saying, "Rawr." Patrick wears Groucho glasses and greets SpongeBob happily. SpongeBob screams and jumps up, almost crashing into the ceiling. Patrick takes his glasses off and apologizes for scaring SpongeBob. SpongeBob asks from the ceiling why he cannot be frightening for once. He drops to the floor and asks where his chance is. Patrick says if SpongeBob wants to be scary, he needs a good costume. They walk inside together. The scene transitions to SpongeBob walking out of his closet with a big white sheet on. He asks Patrick what he thinks. Patrick says it is great and asks if SpongeBob is going as his trick-or-treat bag. SpongeBob corrects him and says he is the ghost of the Flying Dutchman. Patrick says something is missing. Patrick runs inside SpongeBob's closet. A tree falls down, but then gets sawed down by Patrick. He comes out with a pair of wooden clogs. He tells SpongeBob to step into these babies. SpongeBob steps into the clogs. Patrick declares, "This is terrifying." SpongeBob says he does not know about this costume. The haunted mattress fails. The doorbell rings and trick-or-treaters laugh off-screen. Patrick tells SpongeBob to come on because little kids are easy to scare. The door opens, revealing two kids from the beginning of the episode, the mummy and the witch, along with another young fish wearing a green coat and a big pumpkin on its head. All of them hold candy bags. The kids say, "Trick or treat," together. SpongeBob stands in front of the kids and tries to scare them like he did Patrick. He says, "Rar rar." The kids laugh at him. One kid comments to look at the haunted mattress. The kids laugh again. SpongeBob says okay and offers them candy. He holds up a bowl full of candy. The first kid says, "No please, that was enough of a treat already." The kids walk away still laughing. SpongeBob sits on his inflatable couch feeling misunderstood. He tells Patrick he does not get it. Patrick holds scissors in his right hand and has a puppet on his left hand. He shows SpongeBob his new paper ghost and says it is scary. SpongeBob announces that is it. Patrick asks what is it. SpongeBob asks what the difference is between that ghost and him. Patrick looks at his hand ghost and then at SpongeBob in his costume. He does not see the obvious difference. Patrick says no and tells SpongeBob not to tell him. He keeps looking at his hand and then SpongeBob and starts breathing more heavily. He insists he can do this and begs SpongeBob not to tell him. Patrick realizes he cannot find the obvious difference and gives up. He tells SpongeBob, okay, he can tell him. The radical solution. SpongeBob points to his head and says he has a square head. He grabs the puppet ghost and explains a real ghost has a round one. He follows his index finger around the perimeters of the puppet ghost's head. All they have to do is make his head round and he will be scary. The scene transitions to SpongeBob sitting on a chair in his bathroom. Patrick wears goggles and holds a purple shell-shaped electric razor in his hand. Patrick asks if SpongeBob is ready. SpongeBob shows the paper ghost and tells Patrick to remember to make him look like this. Patrick razors off SpongeBob's sides. Patrick asks if SpongeBob is sure he wants to do this. SpongeBob tells Patrick to shave him down and make him round. Patrick razors off more and uses one piece to wipe sweat from his forehead. Patrick says they should get to it. He razors off more parts. Later, SpongeBob appears as a round ghost. SpongeBob asks Patrick what he thinks. Patrick says it is perfect. He shakes SpongeBob's hand and declares that is scary. Patrick puts on his Groucho glasses and suggests they go scare somebody. The scene cuts to SpongeBob running down a street trying to scare people. He announces he is the Flying Dutchman. Patrick says he does not know who he is. SpongeBob pretends to fly and rings the doorbell of one home. A man opens the door. SpongeBob tries to scare him by saying he is the Flying Dutchman. Patrick adds that he is the Flying Dutchman's best friend. Both run off laughing. The man calls after them asking if they want their candy. Both jump behind some coral shaped like a skeleton head. Patrick comments that was something, and SpongeBob's costume really packs a punch. SpongeBob asks if Patrick thinks so. Patrick says there is no question, and SpongeBob scared the barnacles off that guy. Still, the haunted sleeping patch. SpongeBob asks who they should scare next. Patrick says there is a whole party full of people down at the Krusty Krab. The Flying Dutchman is going to show up uninvited. Kids laugh nearby. Patrick says someone is coming now. SpongeBob jumps out to scare the trick-or-treaters from earlier. He says he is the Flying Dutchman. SpongeBob and Patrick run off laughing again. One kid asks if that was the haunted mattress. Another kid guesses he has been demoted to the haunted sleeping patch. The kids laugh. This reveals that SpongeBob's new costume still does not scare anyone. Even after shaving his head round, people still mock him and refuse to be frightened. The scene cuts to the Krusty Krab, where a Halloween feast is happening. Mr. Krabs bobs for apples with his daughter Pearl, who dresses as Frankenstein's bride. Mr. Krabs successfully bobs an apple but accidentally swallows it and chokes. Pearl cries and says her dad is embarrassing her again. She runs off. Mr. Krabs spits out the apple, which shoots past Squidward and Sandy, breaking a window off-screen. Sandy greets Squidward while he dresses as the Flying Dutchman. Sandy's hair and head are shaped like a goldfish. She comments it is a great party. Squidward asks what Sandy is supposed to be. Sandy explains she is a pet goldfish in a bowl. Squidward says he does not get it. Sandy and Squidward drink fruit punch. The big entrance gone wrong. SpongeBob and Patrick are on the roof of the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob is tied up with rope, which Patrick will lower him in with. SpongeBob opens a door on the roof to peek through at the party. Patrick asks if SpongeBob is ready. SpongeBob gives a thumbs up. SpongeBob tells Patrick to kill the lights. The lights go off. Everybody begins panicking and running around screaming. SpongeBob is lowered in with a scary appearance. Patrick talks through a megaphone to scare everyone. Mr. Krabs hides in the apple barrel. Patrick announces he is the Flying Dutchman and demands everyone's souls. A jellyfish comes up behind Patrick, rubs its hands sinisterly, and zaps him in the butt. Patrick stands there for a few seconds. He screams and starts running around in circles while SpongeBob tumbles around. Patrick rubs his rear on the Krusty Krab chimney, trying to shake off the jellyfish sting. As Patrick continues running around, SpongeBob dangles upside down. This reveals his pants. One kid notices SpongeBob's pants and announces, "That is no Dutchman, that is SpongeBob." Sandy and Squidward both say SpongeBob's name. Everyone laughs. SpongeBob still dangles and yells for help. Patrick uses the megaphone to insist he is not SpongeBob, and those are his street clothes. The crowd keeps laughing. Someone says, "Flying Dutchman, flying dope man." Lightning strikes. The entrance of the Krusty Krab suddenly opens with bright light. The Flying Dutchman screams for them to stop. The real Flying Dutchman arrives. Everyone gasps as glowing green smoke comes into the Krusty Krab. A glowing green figure appears. It is the actual Flying Dutchman. He laughs evilly, making everyone scream in terror. Mr. Krabs announces it is the real Flying Dutchman and faints. The Flying Dutchman confirms they should bet their lily-white livers he is real. He will let them in on a little secret. He is going to steal their souls. Everyone screams. The Flying Dutchman tells them to be quiet. He breathes out flames to burn them. The Flying Dutchman says they had it coming. Every year, people dress like him. Squidward takes his costume off and whistles nonchalantly. The Flying Dutchman complains this turns his name into a laughingstock. But that is not the reason he is taking their souls. He points at SpongeBob hanging upside down. This is the straw that broke the camel's back. Out of all the Dutchman costumes he has seen, SpongeBob's is the most insulting. SpongeBob asks if he means SpongeBob is not scary. The Flying Dutchman asks if SpongeBob thinks he is scary. He cackles and cuts the rope holding SpongeBob. SpongeBob falls to the floor. The Flying Dutchman says he will tell SpongeBob about scary. There are all kinds of scary things in the world. Spiders are scary. He himself is scary. SpongeBob is not scary. The Flying Dutchman says they should get this over with. He flies back to the partygoers to steal their souls. He laughs evilly in their faces, which makes everyone scream again. One fish shakes his head, begging for mercy. The accidental horror. Sandy calls out to SpongeBob. The Flying Dutchman says first he must get rid of this stupid costume. He removes SpongeBob's ghost costume and then stares at SpongeBob in horror. The Flying Dutchman flies out of the Krusty Krab screaming. SpongeBob is now shown as skinless with just a brain, eyes, and a mouth with the lower half of his body still intact. SpongeBob comments that he scared the Flying Dutchman. He laughs in triumph. Everyone else except Patrick runs out screaming. SpongeBob tells Patrick it worked. He scared everybody. Patrick agrees and guesses it was SpongeBob's pink hat. SpongeBob asks what pink hat. Patrick points at SpongeBob's head. SpongeBob realizes that is not a hat, that is his brain. He pats his exposed brain. Patrick says, "Oh," and runs away screaming. The screen cuts to black. SpongeBob says off-screen not to worry because it grows back. The episode ends. This ending is simultaneously triumphant and horrifying. SpongeBob finally achieved his goal of scaring people, but not in the way he intended. He wanted a scary costume. Instead, Patrick shaved off his entire outer body, exposing his brain and internal structure. This accidental body horror succeeds where his costume failed. The episode suggests that true horror comes not from trying to be scary, but from revealing what should stay hidden. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to SpongeHenge, The Wind That Never Stops. SpongeHenge aired on the 23rd of November 2007 as part of SpongeBob SquarePants' 5th season. The episode tells a dark story about endless wind, jellyfish obsession, isolation, and the eventual collapse of civilization. Unlike typical SpongeBob episodes that reset to normal by the end, this one concludes with Bikini Bottom destroyed and SpongeBob's fate uncertain thousands of years in the future. The episode begins with a shot of Bikini Bottom. Wind blows wildly through the underwater city. Nat comments that Neptune has stirred up quite a gale tonight. He must be mad about something. Shuby laughs and says that is silly. Everyone knows Poseidon is ruler of the undersea. A bag of goulash blows out of Shuby's hand. She laments losing her leftovers. Nat sobs and asks why Neptune would do this. SpongeBob snores in his bed. The bag of goulash breaks through his window and lands on his face. SpongeBob smells it and says goulash. He opens the window and calls out to whoever dropped their goulash. He asks if anyone is there. The wind makes music through SpongeBob's pores. SpongeBob notices his pores are whistling in the wind. He jumps outside. SpongeBob makes music and laughs. A jellyfish comes to SpongeBob. SpongeBob laughs and says that tickles. The jellyfish buzzes to the music. SpongeBob says the little critter likes his whistling pores. The jellyfish goes into SpongeBob's head. SpongeBob laughs uncontrollably and says that tickles. He laughs until a voice attracts his attention. SpongeBob looks up to see the moon with a real human face on it. The moon and sun with human faces. The moon yawns and announces its shift is over. The scene cuts to daytime with the sun having a human face as well. The sun tells SpongeBob it is time for work. SpongeBob tells the jellyfish it is time to go out. He takes a deep breath and shoots the jellyfish out from one of the holes in his head. SpongeBob says it has been fun, but he must get to work. The jellyfish follows him. SpongeBob comments on the strong wind this morning. The wind blows SpongeBob away. More jellyfish come. SpongeBob asks if Sparky can tell his friends. SpongeBob does not have time to play right now. The jellyfish tickles SpongeBob. SpongeBob laughs uncontrollably and begs them to stop. He continues laughing until he lets go of the rocks. SpongeBob lands back in bed. He realizes he is going to be late. SpongeBob runs out the door, but jellyfish pick him up. He tells them he does not have time to play. SpongeBob gets blown back. He announces he has not been tardy one time in his career as a fry cook, and he will not start today. SpongeBob gets slung out of his home and blown back again. The jellyfish laugh at SpongeBob's struggle. The door closes on SpongeBob's hands. SpongeBob screams as his fingers swell to huge sizes. He says he needs to call in some help. He tries, but his swollen fingers are too big for the buttons. He dials with his nose and calls the Krusty Krab. Mr. Krabs answers and identifies the restaurant. SpongeBob yells that he needs help. Mr. Krabs' violent fishing solution. Mr. Krabs asks where SpongeBob has been. Customers are blowing into the restaurant like crazy. The scene shows Nat flying through the door, literally, and landing on his face before getting in line. SpongeBob apologizes and explains that jellyfish do not want him to go to work. Mr. Krabs asks about jellyfish. SpongeBob explains they are attracted to his whistly holes. Mr. Krabs says he will never understand what SpongeBob just said. But if SpongeBob needs transportation, Mr. Krabs knows just the thing. Mr. Krabs casts a fishing rod which hooks onto SpongeBob by one of his pores. Mr. Krabs says he got him. He comments that this one is putting up a fight. SpongeBob drags on the ground. Mr. Krabs says SpongeBob is fighting too hard. The scene shows SpongeBob getting tossed in the air. Mr. Krabs talks to himself about how to reel SpongeBob in. He must wear him down. He gives SpongeBob a little slack. SpongeBob blows back a little. Then Mr. Krabs yanks hard. SpongeBob gets pulled violently. Mr. Krabs repeats giving slack, then yanking. He pulls a beaten-up SpongeBob in. Mr. Krabs announces SpongeBob is ready for work. He puts SpongeBob's hat on his head. One by one, SpongeBob's teeth fall out of his mouth. Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob to get in there and start pushing out patties. SpongeBob salutes dazedly and says, "Aye, aye, sir." His left arm falls off. This moment demonstrates how Mr. Krabs treats SpongeBob like an actual fish being caught. The violent reeling process destroys SpongeBob's body, but Mr. Krabs considers him ready for work anyway. SpongeBob has lost teeth and an entire arm, but must still cook. Cooking in the wind. Now in the kitchen, SpongeBob walks over to his grill. He announces they should get these patties started right. Wind blows patties onto the walls. This gives SpongeBob an idea. He lets all ingredients blow from his hands onto the patties stuck on the walls. SpongeBob calls out that orders are up. He hums happily. The window opens and sound comes through SpongeBob's pores again. SpongeBob realizes they have found him. The jellyfish come in through the chimney toward SpongeBob. SpongeBob asks them to please not do this. He asks if they could come back after business hours. He is trying to work here. As the wind continues, the Krusty Krab gets blown off into the sky. The entire building lifts away, leaving only the green floorboards behind. SpongeBob holds onto his spatula in the floorboards. Squidward slides past him in his wooden boat. Mr. Krabs steps backward while protecting his cash register. SpongeBob loses his grip on the Krusty Krab floorboards. He launches through the air. SpongeBob lands on Patrick's rock. He grabs onto the weather vane and hangs on for dear life as the heavy wind continues blowing. Inside Patrick's rock, a weatherman on TV reports that the weather situation is much worse across the country. Another reporter named Bob says this does not look like the winds will stop anytime soon. The TV reporter gets blown away on live television, hiding at Patrick's rock. Patrick laughs and says fishy go bye-bye. He eats kelp cream while SpongeBob enters and falls. A reporter named Barbara announces that is the way it is in the world today. Patrick throws his ice cream cone at the TV. He calls it boring. He does not want to watch boring stuff. He wants to watch something decent. SpongeBob interrupts and apologizes. He needs a place to hide from those jellyfish. Patrick asks what jellyfish. SpongeBob explains that ever since the wind started, a sound whistles through his holes that jellyfish seem to love. Patrick's rock opens and jellyfish come in. Patrick greets them. A jellyfish stings Patrick. He yells in pain. Patrick angrily tells SpongeBob to get out. Jellyfish blow Patrick away. Patrick apologizes but says SpongeBob has become a negative influence. SpongeBob laughs and says at least the wind stopped. Jellyfish sting SpongeBob. SpongeBob hides in a cave. SpongeBob thinks he lost them. He guesses he should just stay here where it is safe and quiet and dark. He says it is okay. He will only hide out here for a second. It should not take long. He will stay behind these rocks. These sedentary, lifeless rocks. The French narrator announces later to indicate significant time has passed. The stone companion. SpongeBob sits together with an exact stone replica of himself. SpongeBob tells his buddy he thought he would spruce him up a little. SpongeBob asks what the stone said. The stone supposedly tells SpongeBob he is his best friend too. SpongeBob agrees and suggests they have some fun. SpongeBob announces dinner is ready. He offers tea to the stone. SpongeBob asks if the stone wants sugar. 1 lump or 2. SpongeBob tells the stone he can have all the sugar. He dumps everything into the tea. SpongeBob says he feels comfortable around the stone. Sugar crumbles in his mouth. SpongeBob asks if he can confess something because he knows the stone will understand. He has this problem. He seems to attract jellyfish. SpongeBob laughs and asks how to handle a thing like that. The SpongeBob stone stays still. SpongeBob agrees they are both at a loss. SpongeBob curses and says he will be stuck in this cave forever. He sighs. The stone replica's pores make music as wind blows through. SpongeBob says, of course, and calls it a brilliant idea. SpongeBob takes the stone outside. He says they will see what happens this time. Jellyfish come toward them. SpongeBob tells them to go get his buddy. The jellyfish hate the music. They buzz over to SpongeBob instead. SpongeBob greets them and says it has been a long time. He asks what they think about his little friend's song. The stone continues to play foul notes. SpongeBob asks if something is wrong. Jellyfish sting SpongeBob. SpongeBob runs back to the cave. The mathematical solution. SpongeBob realizes he created one stone SpongeBob that uttered a note in a foul key. But if he were to craft another in a different size, the dimensions of that hollow center, multiplied by the number of holes, may offer another tune. He pulls down an extremely complicated equation on a blackboard. One tune could soothe those jellyfish, but which one is the right size? SpongeBob decides he will just have to make a bunch of them. SpongeBob makes 8 musical stones. He announces that should do it. The SpongeBob stones produce melodious notes in the breeze. SpongeBob says it actually worked. The jellyfish are finally leaving him alone. He can go back to work now. SpongeBob laughs and runs back to Bikini Bottom. He announces the Krusty Krab. Here he comes. SpongeBob gasps and stops running. He asks how long he was gone. SpongeBob finds the Krusty Krab partially buried in sand. He screams no repeatedly and cries desperately. This moment reveals the true horror of the episode. SpongeBob thought he was in the cave for days or weeks at most. The Krusty Krab being buried in sand suggests years or decades have passed. Everyone SpongeBob knew is likely gone. His entire life has disappeared while he was hiding and building stone statues. 3,000 years later. The French narrator announces 3,000 years later. 3 aliens and their guide float down to SpongeBob's stone statues. The alien tour guide explains that to this day, no one knows why these mysterious statues were created or by whom. One alien takes a picture with its mouth. The guide continues that all they know is the genius of their design has caused the annual migration of jellyfish to their wondrous tune. Jellyfish come and go in and out of the pores of the SpongeBob stone statues. Off in the distance, SpongeBob laughs. The camera pans into one of the statues' mouths as the episode ends. This ending suggests SpongeBob may still be alive somehow after 3,000 years, or his laugh echoes through time as a ghost. SpongeHenge stands as one of the darkest episodes in SpongeBob history. The episode explores isolation, the passage of time, losing everything you know, and civilization collapse. SpongeBob loses his job, his friends, his home, and his entire world. The wind never stops. The jellyfish never leave him alone. His only solution is to hide in a cave and slowly lose his mind while building stone monuments. The stone companion scene shows SpongeBob's mental deterioration. He talks to rocks as if they respond. He serves them tea and confides in them. The loneliness has broken his grip on reality. When he finally solves the jellyfish problem and returns to civilization, he discovers everything is gone. The Krusty Krab lies buried. Bikini Bottom has been abandoned. Everyone SpongeBob loved has been dead for potentially decades. The 3,000-year time jump in the ending provides no comfort or resolution. Aliens study SpongeBob statues as mysterious ancient ruins. They do not know who built them or why. SpongeBob's story has been completely forgotten. His statues survive, but his identity does not. The jellyfish migration continues annually, suggesting the wind never stopped and the problem was never truly solved. SpongeBob may have trapped himself in an eternal cycle, forever building monuments to appease creatures that will never fully leave him alone. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Earworm. The musical doodle obsession begins. Earworm aired on the 27th of November 2010 as part of SpongeBob SquarePants' 7th season. The episode explores addiction through the metaphor of a catchy song that takes over SpongeBob's mind. While presented as a cartoon about music, the episode depicts the behavioral patterns and consequences of substance dependency in a way that young viewers can understand. The episode begins during sunset at the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob sings the musical doodle while preparing food. He sings that trying to stop it is futile, so just listen to the musical doodle. Squidward growls and grabs SpongeBob's lips. He demands SpongeBob stop that incessant babbling. SpongeBob tries to apologize, but his voice is muffled by Squidward holding his mouth. Squidward growls once more in frustration. Mr. Krabs asks what SpongeBob is doing. It is closing time. He hands SpongeBob a mop and bucket and tells him to swab the deck. SpongeBob salutes with the mop and slides past Squidward while singing. He sings about mopping and the musical doodle. Squidward walks over to SpongeBob and gets hit with the mop. Squidward demands SpongeBob quit it with that tune. SpongeBob apologizes and says it is just so catchy. Squidward says he does not care and tells SpongeBob to stop. The radio plays the same song. Squidward walks back to the register. He announces he will cleanse himself by listening to a little public radio. He turns on the radio and musical doodle plays. SpongeBob gets excited and announces it is the musical doodle on the radio. He sings along about how the record spins all day and takes you far away. Trying to stop it is futile, so just listen to the musical doodle. Squidward turns off the radio. He says it figures SpongeBob would be into that hideous pop fodder. SpongeBob declares this is a sign. Squidward asks if it is a sign that SpongeBob is a true boob. SpongeBob starts to agree, then corrects himself. No, it means this song and SpongeBob were meant to be together. Squidward says, great, now he hates two things. Mr. Krabs starts to announce it is time to go home. Squidward bursts out the door, laughing and yelling about freedom before Mr. Krabs can finish. Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob it is time to hit the road. He looks up to see SpongeBob sitting at a table listening to Musical Doodle on the radio. SpongeBob sings along to do the Musical Doodle and listen again to the Musical Doodle. The announcer reveals this is the new song by the Sonars called Musical Doodle. SpongeBob sighs happily and repeats the song title. Buying the record, Mr. Krabs yells SpongeBob's name. SpongeBob realizes he is still at work and apologizes. He floats out the door, still singing Musical Doodle. Mr. Krabs asks what he is running here, a nut house. SpongeBob flies through the streets, singing when a record version of Musical Doodle plays. He falls down. Getting up, he sees a record shop playing Musical Doodle. SpongeBob happily takes out $1 to buy the record. The scene transitions to Gary eating his dinner when SpongeBob arrives home. SpongeBob announces he found just the snail he was looking for. Gary tries to escape, but SpongeBob captures him. SpongeBob asks if Gary wants to hear his new record. Gary meows and shakes his head no. SpongeBob chuckles and says he knew Gary would want to hear it. He puts Gary down and opens his shell, revealing a record player. He places the record on the turntable and Musical Doodle plays. SpongeBob joins in with the song. He continues singing until late into the night. He looks up to see Gary already asleep. SpongeBob announces they should spin that record one more time. He looks at the clock reading 9 o'clock. He realizes it is late and he must get to sleep. He takes the record off the turntable and puts it back in the sleeve. He tells Gary to come to bed when ready. SpongeBob walks upstairs, humming, and climbs into bed. He sighs happily, unable to stop. Suddenly, SpongeBob hears himself whistling the song. He covers his mouth but still continues whistling it. Thinking quickly, he takes a cork and plugs up his mouth. His holes make a hollow whistling to the tune. He wakes up and says, fine, he will just listen to it one more time to get it out of his system. The scene transitions to SpongeBob downstairs, listening to the song on the record player. SpongeBob joins in singing. He giggles and says, just one more time. He puts the needle on the record again and sings along. He keeps saying one more time and playing it again. This behavior mirrors addiction patterns where someone promises themselves just one more use. The scene transitions to the next morning at the Krusty Krab. A sleepy SpongeBob stands at the grill in the kitchen. Mr. Krabs says SpongeBob is pushing his luck. SpongeBob was nearly late this morning. He must be more conscientious, or Mr. Krabs will start docking his pay. Mr. Krabs whips out a tambourine and starts dancing while singing Musical Doodle. SpongeBob cowers in fear as Mr. Krabs shakes the tambourine at him. Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob to wake up and asks if he needs patties to get started. SpongeBob confirms and dumps a bucket of Krabby Patties onto the grill. Mr. Krabs tells him to just focus on making patties. The obsession takes over work. SpongeBob starts singing the tune quietly. He gasps and giggles nervously. Mr. Krabs walks back to his office and closes the door while watching SpongeBob through the window. As soon as Mr. Krabs leaves, SpongeBob's legs start bobbing up and down. He sings about thinking you control it, but it is way too hard. Every time it plays, there is an electric charge. He covers his mouth and tells himself to hang on. He should play that last part back. SpongeBob presses his tooth like a button on a tape recorder which rewinds the song. He presses play and the preceding verse plays. SpongeBob announces that is it. He should not try to control it. He should stop fighting the Doodle's infectious groove. He comes into the restaurant with a Krabby Patty on a plate singing. He lands at a table and gives the patty to a customer. He cartwheels to the next table and gives another customer a Krabby Patty while singing. A customer named Lonnie tries to get SpongeBob's attention. She says, "Excuse me, but SpongeBob keeps singing and dancing." She announces she asked for no onions. SpongeBob continues singing and ignoring her. Lonnie complains about what is wrong with the youth of the ocean today. SpongeBob slides up to another customer and splashes soda in his face while singing. He dances over to another table, singing about how the sound in your head is brutal and you are infected by the musical doodle. Customers flee. Harold reaches for his patty, but SpongeBob keeps taking it away while singing. He places Harold's patty on top of another customer's patty and walks off singing. At another table, Fred eats his Krabby Patty. He turns around and sees SpongeBob still singing. SpongeBob's spit gets onto Fred. Fred groans in disgust and says he cannot eat like this. He gets up and leaves. Another customer says he cannot eat either and leaves his table. All the other customers leave as well. SpongeBob continues singing. Meanwhile, in his office, Mr. Krabs sleeps on a stack of coins. He wakes up and comments that the door squeak sounded decidedly disgruntled. He opens the door and notices the customers leaving. He yells about his customers and pushes the floorboard up. This causes the customers to fall back and on top of each other. Mr. Krabs demands to know why they are running off. One customer says she never got her fries. Harold says he never got his patty. Another customer says he got drenched in soda and it was all because that yellow idiot keeps singing that annoying song. Mr. Krabs looks up and growls as he sees SpongeBob humming musical doodle while washing a table. Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob he must cut out that singing. It is repelling profits. The threat of being sent home. SpongeBob explains he has tried and tried, but it keeps playing over and over in his mind. Mr. Krabs tells him to stop singing that song. One more outburst like that and Mr. Krabs will send him home for the day. SpongeBob gasps in horror at this threat. The scene transitions to the kitchen where SpongeBob stands at the grill. He tries hard not to sing. While straining, he closes his eyes, but they sing the musical doodle. SpongeBob keeps them shut. He tells himself to keep his trap shut, but it was not his trap singing. Suddenly, he hears his holes on his back singing. He takes a bunch of buns and plugs them up. He reminds himself that one more outburst and Mr. Krabs will send him home for the day. He says okay, but he feels it building up inside. He covers his face, still trying not to sing. The scene transitions to show the kitchen completely trashed. The walls have the word doodle written all over them. The grill is tipped over. Ropes of buns hang from the ceiling. Ketchup and mustard bottles are stacked up. Most of the floorboards are torn up. SpongeBob stands hugging himself and humming goofily. Captions show this as babbling musically. SpongeBob mumbles lyrics about being safe from that infernal racket, fired and running wild. Mr. Krabs walks into the kitchen and gasps. He demands to know what SpongeBob is doing. He announces SpongeBob is done for the day. SpongeBob yells that trying to escape is futile. He runs out on all fours and crashes through the kitchen wall. He runs past Sandy while singing and laughing maniacally. Sandy asks what his deal is. Squidward explains SpongeBob is obsessed with this artless pop tune. Sandy says they must help him quickly because he could be in great danger. SpongeBob runs through town singing about how the song you ran from is back again. You wonder if the madness will ever end. He runs by Patrick standing on the street. Patrick greets him. Sandy, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs run after SpongeBob. Sandy tells Patrick to come on because they need his help. SpongeBob, still humming, dances to his house. He crawls up the side and into the porthole window. Sandy kicks the door down as she, Mr. Krabs, Patrick, and Squidward enter. Sandy calls for SpongeBob. Patrick looks around, asking where SpongeBob is. He looks up to see SpongeBob on the ceiling singing. The lights go on. Patrick tells SpongeBob to hold still because this will not hurt a bit. Sandy says to get him. She and Mr. Krabs grab SpongeBob and pin him to the floor. Patrick pounces on them. SpongeBob gets taped to a chair. The earworm diagnosis. Sandy looks at SpongeBob through a magnifying glass. She announces just as she thought. SpongeBob suffers from a condition known as earworm. When your brain becomes stuck on a catchy tune, you become susceptible to earworm infection. SpongeBob has a nasty one. The scene shows inside SpongeBob's head where a little green worm sits in a rocking chair listening to musical doodle. Mr. Krabs suggests they just rip the little sucker out. Sandy tells him to hold it. They cannot do that because it might damage SpongeBob's brain. The only way to drive the earworm out is with another catchy tune. Mr. Krabs says he has one. It is an old sea shanty he and his mates used to sing on the high seas. He puts a sailor hat on and sings about drafty, wet conditions and rampant disease. He glares at the earworm in SpongeBob's head, which still listens to musical doodle. Mr. Krabs announces the earworm is not budging. Sandy says she will be darned if anyone can resist a Western song while wearing a Western hat. She pulls out a guitar and places a miniature cowboy hat on the earworm. She sings about life on the prairie being lonesome. When she gets lonesome, she fires up her friend generator contraption. The earworm throws the cowboy hat away. Sandy says that only made him madder. They need somebody with real musical talent to get rid of this thing. Squidward saves the day. Squidward says, all right, he will do it, but only because they required an artist of such high talent. Sandy says, right. Squidward plays that little doohickey. Squidward corrects her that it is called a clarinet. He takes his clarinet and walks over to SpongeBob. He begins playing really loud. The earworm falls out of his chair. As Squidward keeps playing, the earworm, wearing a fedora and carrying a briefcase, slips out of SpongeBob's head and slithers away. Sandy announces Squidward did it and drove the little critter out. Patrick tells SpongeBob to hold still. He rips the tape off SpongeBob along with most of his skin. SpongeBob runs to Squidward and hugs him repeatedly while thanking him. Squidward says, all right, SpongeBob is grateful, now leave him alone. He pushes SpongeBob away, but SpongeBob hugs him again. The scene transitions to Squidward's house at night as Squidward climbs into bed. He comments, that was a neat little tune he came up with today. As he closes his eyes, the earworm slithers across his head, slips under his eyelid, and into his head. As Squidward begins humming, the song he played earlier begins playing in his head. The view cuts to the exterior of his home. Squidward says, that is catchy stuff. He hums contentedly, then screams in agony as the screen cuts to black. The episode ends with Squidward now infected with his own earworm, suggesting the cycle continues. Earworm functions as an allegory for addiction. SpongeBob discovers something that makes him feel good. He cannot stop thinking about it. He promises himself just one more time. He neglects his responsibilities. His behavior drives away everyone around him. He destroys his workplace. He gets fired. His friends must intervene. The earworm parasite represents how addiction takes control of the brain and makes someone act against their own interests. The episode shows addiction not as a moral failing, but as something that hijacks normal brain function, requiring outside help to overcome. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to SpongeBob versus the Patty Gadget. Patchy the Pirate introduces the tale. SpongeBob versus the Patty Gadget aired on the 31st of July, 2007, as part of SpongeBob SquarePants' 5th season. The episode takes a unique format by having Patchy the Pirate narrate the entire story in rhyming verse. This structure gives the episode a fairy tale quality while telling a story about technology replacing workers and the value of human skill versus automation. The episode begins with a book entitled The Legend of SpongeBob SquarePants, sitting on a wooden platform. Patchy the Pirate greets viewers and says he will spin a tale they will not soon forget. The book opens to show a chapter called SpongeBob versus the Patty Gadget. Patchy explains that SpongeBob was working with his eye on the grill until he heard a sharp sound that gave him a chill. SpongeBob asks what is going on and what it could mean. A round metal machine comes through the doors. Patrick and Sandy run off in fear. Patchy announces it is a deep-fry patty cooking machine. SpongeBob gasps. Patchy asks who we see hiding behind it. Squidward walks out from behind the machine. Patchy says none other than Squidward and his bad face acne. The camera zooms in on the zits on Squidward's face. Squidward protests this description. Mr. Krabs questions the machine. Mr. Krabs demands to know what contraption Squidward hauled into his place. Squidward calls it a miracle and a marvel. It will cook Krabby Patties at a fabulous pace. Mr. Krabs asks how the patties taste. Squidward tells him to try one and shove it in his face. He hands Mr. Krabs a Krabby Patty. Mr. Krabs eats it and admits the patty was yummy, though it sits like a rock in his stomach. But he already has a fry cook who is always on time. Squidward argues that the gizmo is faster and Mr. Krabs will not pay it a dime. Mr. Krabs says the machine sounds delightful, but asks how much it costs. Squidward responds that Mr. Krabs should just fire SpongeBob and tell him to get lost. SpongeBob stares from the kitchen window, watching this conversation. Patchy narrates that the machine wanted SpongeBob's job to make him quit, but SpongeBob did not like it, not one bit. Pushing his grill, SpongeBob bursts through the door. SpongeBob pushes the grill out of the kitchen and announces he challenges the Gadget. He declares patty war. Patchy says with 3 little words, Mr. Krabs started the show. Flag raised in the air, he cried ready, set, go. This moment sets up the central conflict. SpongeBob must prove his value as a worker against a machine that never gets tired, never asks for raises, and never costs anything beyond the initial purchase. The competition begins. Patchy narrates that quick as a flash, Squidward pulled the big lever and sat back feeling clever. SpongeBob, with spatula held tight in his fist, flung 20 patties, and not a single one missed. SpongeBob throws 20 patties onto the grill. The crowd is impressed. Sandy says, wow. Patchy explains they cheered full of glee, all except Patrick, who had to go pee. Everyone cheers except Patrick, who wiggles uncomfortably. A noise and clatter comes from the machine. Patties pop out in a burst of hot steam. The Gadget is fast and its first batch is completed. But SpongeBob yells out that he will not be defeated. He takes in some air. SpongeBob swells his physique. Then dozens of patties fill up his cheeks. SpongeBob breathes in so hard that a bag of patties flies into his mouth. He strains and sweats. He summons his will and shoots Krabby Patties right onto the grill. Squidward yells, not bad. Patchy narrates that Squidward acknowledged it was a really good try. But Squidward wants to see how SpongeBob does against the machine set on high. He pulls down the machine lever to set it on high. The gizmo shudders, clatters, and shakes. As Squidward laughs, Sandy calls him a schnook. But SpongeBob cries out that he will not lose to that thing. He raises up 2 spatulas and leaps like a spring. His hands become a blur and the patties go flying. He fries up 100 without even trying. Squidward's desperation. Squidward becomes worried because SpongeBob cannot be beat. Squidward announces he has one last chance and will turn up the heat. He struggles and strains until his face turns dark blue. Then the lever moves forward and breaks right in 2. The Gadget buckles and sparks. It cracks like a gun. Squidward takes off running and yells to let him know if he won. He abandons the competition entirely rather than face defeat. Lightning flies from the machine's opening. It looks ready to burst. But SpongeBob, still standing, yells for the foul beast to do its worst. The patties come flying by 2s and by 3s, by dozens, by hundreds. Patchy says it is something to see. That machine is fast, but SpongeBob is faster. He proves to that thing that he is its master. The patty Gadget blows up. The Gadget blows into bits and dies with a boom. The blast is so loud it wakes King Neptune. The scene cuts to King Neptune in his bed asleep with a teddy bear until he hears the boom. King Neptune mumbles asking what that was. The scene cuts back to the Krusty Krab. Patchy narrates it is all over, finished and done. With his head held up high, SpongeBob knows he won. The crowd yells, "Hooray," and says Squidward's name is now Mud. But as they cheer, SpongeBob falls with a thud. SpongeBob falls over and lets go of his spatula. The crowd gasps. The fake funeral. The scene cuts to a grave where Sandy, Patrick, Mr. Krabs, and Squidward stand in front of it. Patchy says the service was short, with tears shed with regret. Mr. Krabs, Patrick, and Sandy walk away. Squidward, it seems, is the one most upset. Squidward sets flowers over the grave, then walks away crying. Then SpongeBob walks up to the grave and takes off his hat. SpongeBob cheers and dances happily. Patchy asks what viewers thought. Did they think SpongeBob was buried down there? They just buried the Gadget. He swears this is true. The view pans below the dirt where we see the Patty Gadget underground. The storybook closes. Patchy says that ends his tale straight from the book. Now he must go and polish his hook. The episode ends. This twist ending provides relief after the apparent tragedy. The funeral was for the machine, not for SpongeBob. The episode faked out viewers into thinking SpongeBob died from overexertion. Instead, he survived, and the technology that threatened to replace him is literally buried. Squidward cries over the machine's grave, showing he became attached to the Gadget, or at least to the idea of SpongeBob being replaced. SpongeBob versus the Patty Gadget tells a story about automation and job security through a children's cartoon lens. The Patty Gadget represents technology that makes workers obsolete. It cooks faster, never complains, never needs breaks, and costs nothing to operate after purchase. From a business perspective, the machine makes perfect sense. Mr. Krabs admits the patties taste good even if they sit heavy in the stomach. SpongeBob's response is to work harder and faster than any human realistically could. He swallows dozens of patties and shoots them onto the grill. He wields 2 spatulas simultaneously. He fries 100 patties without trying. This superhuman effort is the only way he can compete with a machine. The episode suggests workers must push themselves to impossible extremes to prove their worth against automation. The machine ultimately fails not because it is inferior, but because Squidward pushed it beyond its limits. When set on high, it breaks down and explodes. This suggests that technology pushed too hard will fail catastrophically, but it also means SpongeBob's job security depends on the machine malfunctioning, rather than on his actual skill being superior or more valuable. The rhyming verse narration by Patchy gives this labor struggle a mythic quality. By framing it as a legend, the episode treats workplace automation as an eternal conflict rather than a modern problem. Workers have always competed against tools and technology. The specific technology changes, but the fundamental tension remains the same. Will the worker or the machine prove more valuable to the employer? SpongeBob's victory comes at significant personal cost. He pushes himself so hard that viewers and other characters believe he died. The fake funeral suggests that even in victory, workers sacrifice their health and well-being to compete with machines. The episode does not present this as triumphant. SpongeBob dancing on the machine's grave is darkly comic rather than purely celebratory. The episode also explores workplace loyalty and betrayal. Squidward introduces the machine specifically to get SpongeBob fired. He does not care about restaurant efficiency or Mr. Krabs' profits. He simply wants SpongeBob gone. When his plan fails and the machine explodes, Squidward flees rather than face consequences. He only returns for the funeral, where he mourns the machine's destruction. Mr. Krabs' position is purely economic. He likes SpongeBob as an employee, but admits the machine sounds delightful. He only maintains loyalty to SpongeBob because he already has him, and the machine costs money up front. If the machine were free, or if SpongeBob cost more, Mr. Krabs would likely make the switch. This reflects how employers view workers as interchangeable resources rather than individuals with inherent value. The crowd watching the competition represents public opinion about labor and automation. They cheer for SpongeBob because he is the underdog and the familiar face. They root against the machine because it represents an outside threat, but none of them actually help SpongeBob. They simply watch and cheer. This passive support does not change the fundamental power dynamics between worker and employer. The episode aired in 2007 during ongoing debates about globalization, outsourcing, and automation in American manufacturing and service industries. While presented as a silly cartoon about a sponge fighting a patty machine, the episode engages with real anxieties about technological unemployment and worker obsolescence. The rhyming structure and fairy tale framing make these issues accessible to children while still conveying the underlying tension. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Squidward in Clarinet Land. Squidward's perfect day begins. Squidward in Clarinet Land aired on the 24th of March 2010 as part of SpongeBob SquarePants' 7th season. The episode takes Squidward on a surreal journey through a nightmarish dimension accessed through a storage locker. What begins as a workplace dispute about personal property storage transforms into psychological horror as Squidward loses his grip on reality while searching for his clarinet. The episode begins on a beautiful day in Bikini Bottom. A car leaves and pieces of asphalt fly into Squidward's face. Squidward sighs and comments, "What a day." Despite this rough start, Squidward sings happily and enters the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob accidentally hits Squidward with the door. SpongeBob greets the Krusty Krab cheerfully, then notices Squidward and apologizes. Squidward remains smiling and says it is not a problem at all. Mr. Krabs yells about specials and scratches a slate board. The screeching sound bothers everyone except Squidward. Squidward greets a customer and welcomes him to the Krusty Krab. The customer named Thaddeus says he will have a Krabby Patty. His bad breath punches Squidward and plugs his nose, but Squidward stays happy. He announces one Krabby Patty coming up. Mr. Krabs asks why Squidward is in such a chipper mood. Did he get fancy decorative soaps in the mail? Squidward says even better. He has a clarinet recital immediately after work today. Nothing will ruin his day. A baby accidentally squirts milk from his bottle onto Squidward's clarinet box. The mother apologizes. Squidward says no need because not a drop got on it. The baby drools onto Squidward's clarinet. Squidward finally snaps in extreme fury and screams he cannot take this anymore, demanding a secure storage space. Mr. Krabs talks on the phone telling someone there is no early bird special, then realizes it is his mother. Squidward announces this is unacceptable. Mr. Krabs asks what? Squidward points to his clarinet. Mr. Krabs says nice to have him back. Squidward declares this is an outrage. He no longer tolerates his personal items being soiled by the rabble that crawls in this restaurant. He demands a place to put his stuff. Mr. Krabs suggests Squidward could put it with the nacho cheese since no one has gotten near that in years. Squidward hands out a book and asks if Mr. Krabs ever read this. Mr. Krabs identifies it as Bikini Bottom Labor Regulations. He says it is gross and grows hives. He tells Squidward to get that thing away because it is giving him hives. Squidward explains, the book specifically states that all employers must provide employees with a secure, clean place to store personal property. Mr. Krabs curses Squidward for driving a hard bargain. He guesses he could rustle something up. SpongeBob cooks patties and comments on the sizzling juices. Mr. Krabs brings a rusty locker and announces he found it. SpongeBob asks what it is. Spiders eat away SpongeBob's arm. Mr. Krabs identifies it as his old Navy locker, good as new. He opens it and shows bones inside. SpongeBob asks who that is. Mr. Krabs says it appears to be Corporal Sterling and he forgot all about that prank. He empties the locker and tells Squidward his locker is ready. SpongeBob must share the locker. SpongeBob asks if they share lockers like they share hairnets. Squidward says not at a whale's age. Mr. Krabs says not so fast because the law requires all employees have a secure place for personal items. Squidward is required by law to share. Squidward supposes he can share, but only since it is required by law. He complains the locker is filthy and asks if Mr. Krabs expects him to clean it. SpongeBob appears with a bucket and duster and says no. He dusts the locker, causing everyone to cough from dust. He absorbs water and blasts it onto the locker. The locker looks good as new. Mr. Krabs comments it has not sparkled like this since boot camp. Squidward admits this is impressive, but tells SpongeBob to keep his grubby hands to his side. SpongeBob says he finally has a clean place to store his toothbrush. Squidward tells him just do not touch his clarinet. SpongeBob promises nothing untoward will happen. SpongeBob shuts the locker. Squidward rings the bell and announces an order is up. He walks toward SpongeBob and asks what he thinks he is doing. SpongeBob is supposed to be fry cooking. Squidward told him not to touch his stuff. SpongeBob insists he did not touch anything because he wore protective gloves. Besides, does Squidward not like how classy it looks now? Squidward notices velvet lining. SpongeBob says he would like to stand and chat but must attend to his Krusty Krab duties. In the future, please keep interruptions to a minimum. The locker expands impossibly. SpongeBob comes in with a load of appliances. Squidward gives change to a customer and asks what that idiot is doing now. He throws the change on the ground. A customer yells about loose change. People start collecting money until Mr. Krabs bursts out and yells like a gorilla to scare them away. Squidward hopes SpongeBob is not trying to shove boxes into the locker. SpongeBob says it is too late and already done. Squidward threatens that if SpongeBob smashed his clarinet, so help him Neptune. He opens the locker. SpongeBob tells Squidward not to worry because there is plenty of room. Squidward walks inside the locker. SpongeBob says he expanded a bit. Squidward asks where his clarinet is. SpongeBob says that is simple. They just consult the card catalog to find Squidward's clarinet in drawer 36.8B. He opens the cabinet and reveals the clarinet. Squidward says fine, but it is vitally important that nothing happens to it. SpongeBob says not to worry and slams the drawer shut. Squidward places an order onto a table when appliance noises come from the locker. Squidward checks and asks what SpongeBob is doing. A customer asks to order. Squidward asks what she wants. A jackhammer runs loudly. The customer asks if everything is okay back there. Squidward says there is just a bit of renovation. Saw noises get louder and the locker flips. Squidward freaks out about his clarinet and opens the locker door. This reveals a grand locker room, lost in the infinite storage. Squidward calls for SpongeBob and looks for drawer 36.8B. He gasps when he finds a note. The note says the item temporarily moved during reconstruction and relocated to shelf 1018.2E. Squidward searches for that location and finds another note. This note says, oops, SpongeBob meant 2019.3M instead. Squidward grasps the note in anger and calls for SpongeBob. He hears SpongeBob laughing and running. Squidward chases him, asking what he has done. Squidward ends up in a corner and discovers a small hole. He crawls inside and announces he does not play games. Squidward opens a curtain and finds himself in a forest of clarinets. He gasps and asks where he is and what this place is. A clarinet jumps in front of him. Squidward identifies it as his clarinet. The clarinet escapes in SpongeBob's hands. SpongeBob starts laughing. Squidward tells him to come back because he needs his clarinet. He bumps into an eagle head. The eagle announces he is the keeper of the horned forest and demands Squidward state his business. Squidward says he is trying to find his clarinet. The eagle asks about his clarinet. Squidward confirms yes, his clarinet, which he is the proud owner of. The eagle laughs and says a clarinet is not owned. Why does Squidward not tell him why he is really here? Squidward asks if the eagle is calling him a liar. The eagle grabs him with his tongue. Squidward yells. The eagle says he does not appreciate Squidward's tone. The eagle's punishment. Squidward apologizes and says he did not mean to offend. The eagle explains this is a sacred place where clarinets live without persecution. He squeezes Squidward tightly and says Squidward needs to learn respect. Squidward says he has learned respect. The eagle says he does not believe him. He swallows Squidward. Squidward screams and ends up in the stomach. He coughs and sees SpongeBob laughing. Squidward tells him to stand still. SpongeBob continues laughing. Squidward announces he has SpongeBob now. Squidward grabs SpongeBob and falls into a strange room without SpongeBob. Squidward calls for SpongeBob repeatedly. SpongeBob laughs as he hangs down from a hole. As he disappears, the hole vanishes. In a mirror, Squidward laughs wickedly, gets his clarinet, sniffs it, laughs again, and shoves it in his mouth. Two reflections of Squidward in two mirrors with clarinets in their mouths begin playing a high-pitched note at Squidward's ears. This causes Squidward to scream. Squidward runs on a clarinet while 5 clarinets play above. He chases SpongeBob and falls into a clarinet hole. He gets sent into a pinball machine. Patrick announces he wins. The prize is Squidward, and Patrick grabs him. Patrick asks what Squidward is doing here. Squidward asks Patrick to tell him what this place is and how Patrick got so big. Patrick says it must be all the pressure. Squidward asks what he is talking about. Patrick repeats, it must be the pressure. The ground starts shaking. Patrick says he must get out of here and runs off. Squidward asks where he is going. The vacuum and space chase. SpongeBob continues laughing as he runs past Squidward. Squidward gets sucked into a vacuum. The vacuum inflates like a giant balloon and explodes into space. SpongeBob keeps laughing as Squidward chases him. Squidward says he almost has him and shouts as he crashes. The locker opens and Squidward melts out of it. Mr. Krabs laughs about sweet-talking an old lady out of $20 for a Krabby Patty. He laughs again. Squidward groans. SpongeBob asks if Squidward is okay. Squidward mutters about such a nightmare. SpongeBob asks what Squidward is trying to say. Squidward coughs and explains he tried to get his clarinet in there, but it was impossible. He sobs. SpongeBob asks about the clarinet and says, "Oh, Squidward means this." He hands out the clarinet. Squidward demands to know where SpongeBob got that. SpongeBob explains that, with all the ruckus Squidward made over it, he kept it with him just to make sure it was safe. Squidward growls in fury. SpongeBob calls it a friendly gesture. Squidward yells he will show SpongeBob a friendly gesture. He picks SpongeBob up and asks if he knows the horror Squidward has endured. He throws SpongeBob into the locker and says they will see how SpongeBob likes it. He locks it, tugs it out, and throws it into a bus, going to far, far away. The bus leaves, and Squidward sighs with relief. The recital disaster. A judge asks if Squidward is ready. Squidward confirms yes, he is, and as a matter of fact, the judge would not believe what he had to go through to get here. He screams when SpongeBob pops out of Squidward's clarinet case. SpongeBob greets Squidward and says he would not believe what SpongeBob had to go through to get here. Squidward screams again and runs out. SpongeBob comments that he was just going to bring Squidward his clarinet. The episode ends. Squidward in Clarinetland explores workplace boundaries, obsession, and psychological breakdown through surreal horror imagery. The locker becomes a portal to an impossible dimension that reflects Squidward's anxieties about losing control. His clarinet represents his identity and artistic aspirations. When forced to share storage space with SpongeBob, Squidward loses access to this core part of himself. The nightmare journey shows his mental state collapsing as he desperately searches for what defines him. The Eagle Guardian represents judgment and the idea that Squidward does not truly own or deserve his clarinet. The ending reveals the horror was pointless because SpongeBob kept the clarinet safe all along, but Squidward's trust is so damaged he throws SpongeBob into a storage dimension anyway, perpetuating the cycle of madness. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.